This meeting to order, and we're going to ask the Venerable Louis Jones to do the invocation. Thank you.
Let's all bow our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we know that you're always near us and beside us in all that we do. We ask that you be with us this evening as we consider the important affairs of our city. Guide us and direct us as we make the decisions. Grant us the patience to listen, the wisdom to decide, and the courage to decide. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Louis. Okay, I'm going to call for the certification of the closed session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss? Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have certified the closed session to be in accordance with the motion to recess.
Okay, at this point, it is our honor and privilege to recognize. First, we have a couple of proclamations. And whereas Native Americans have utilized the abundance of natural resources in Virginia Beach for over 15,000 years, and whereas significant archaeological sites have been found in Virginia Beach that reveal the details of Native American life here, and whereas the Chesapeake Indian tribe resided in the village settlements in Virginia Beach at the time of or just prior to the early 17th century arrival of permanent English colonists in the region. And whereas Native Americans assisted the English colonists in their survival in the Virginia environment. And whereas members of the Nesseman Indian Nation moved eastward, settling in areas that included Virginia Beach. And whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia is home to 11 state-recognized Indian tribes and officially recognized the Nesseman Indian Nation in 1985. And whereas the United States of America officially recognized the Nesseman Indian Nation in 2018. And whereas members of the Nesseman Indian Nation continue to be vital members of the community in Virginia Beach, and whereas Chief Emeritus Lee Lockamy is a resident of the city of Virginia Beach, whereas November was first declared as Native American Heritage Month in the United States in 1990, and whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia has commemorated November as Native American Heritage Month since 1996, and whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia has recognized the Wednesday immediately preceding Thanksgiving as a Native American Indian Day of Appreciation, and whereas Native American Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the American Indian who called Virginia Beach home, whose abilities and contributions strengthen our community, enrich Virginia Beach's diverse culture, and invigorate Virginia Beach's communities. Therefore, I, Robert M. Dyer, Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, do hereby proclaim November 20th, Native American Heritage Month, and November 25th, 2020, American Indian Day of Appreciation. Thank you. I just wanted to thank you and acknowledge you, and the city clerk is going to present you with the appropriate. And would you like to make some comments?
It's just a pleasure to work with the beach.
And And I'd like to recognize Lee also. He's been a wonderful member of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Once again, further validation for this wonderful award. Next, it's an extreme privilege to read this proclamation. Whereas James A. Cervera has dedicated his life to public service and public safety, and we recognize his tireless commitment. Whereas he was sworn in with the Virginia Beach Police Department on July 1st in 1978 after 2 years of experience with an out-of-state agency. Whereas he had numerous assignments with the police department, including SWAT team leader, Labor Day Task Force, professional development and training, chief's staff, commanding officer of the 2nd Precinct, and deputy chief of operations and investigative divisions. Whereas he was sworn in as police chief on September 1st, 2010. Whereas he established significant programs and policies in the police department, including the first community policing grants, CompStat, formerly known as STARS, Policing Accountability and Crime Reduction Program, Human Rights Commission LGBTQ Liaison, AED naloxone tourniquets for all patrols, West Point Leadership, now IACP Leadership in the police organization for supervisory staff, VDPD citizens, senior citizens and youth police academies, Cadet Challenge Program, and Project Lifesaver. Whereas after the May 31st shooting, he led the police department and represented the city through an unprecedented tragedy, providing an immeasurable contribution in the form of fielding the media while respecting the victims' families, and all those impacted by the tragedy, as well as facilitating care and attention for the officers involved. His leadership during the time was vitally important for the city's perseverance and is recognized throughout our community. Whereas he was a member of FEMA VA Task Force 2 that responded to the Pentagon in 2001. Whereas he was appointed to Governor Terry McAuliffe's Prescription Drug and Heroin Abuse Task Force in 2014. And whereas he continued his public service by serving as a major city's Chief Association Board member, Policing Fellow with the National Police Foundation, Chesapeake Bay Alcohol Safety Program Board member, and Virginia Criminal Justice Services Board member. Whereas he achieved numerous educational successes, including a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from St. Leo University, master's degree in public administration from Old Dominion, FBI National Academy Session 171, Police Executive Leadership School out of the University of Richmond, University of Virginia's Senior Executive Institute, Senior Management Program in Policing, Boston University, and National Executive Institute. Whereas he is the recipient of numerous awards, to include Employee Hall of Fame 2017, Human Rights Commission's inaugural Human Rights Award 1994, proclamation by former Governor Gilmore for efforts in community policing 1991, Department of Army Award of Recognition 2001, Lead Hampton Roads Class of 2002, Exemplary Leadership Award, Lead Board Certified Partnership Excellence Award in 2005, and Wesley Award, Virginia Wesleyan 2019. Whereas on this day we honor a public servant whose leadership and commitment to public safety has immensely benefited the city. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Virginia Beach Council hereby expresses their appreciation to James A. Cervera for his outstanding contributions to our city and our police department, given this day on the 17th day of November 2020. On behalf of a grateful council and City of Virginia Beach, Jim Severa.
Whoa.
Jim, if you can honor us with a few words.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, Mr. City Attorney, it's been a while since I said that all at one time. I'm very humbled by this. I certainly do appreciate it, not only for myself, but for my entire family. I will just take 2 minutes of your time. You know, I 42 years Virginia Beach, almost 2 years in Montclair, New Jersey. Started out the son of Carmine and Rafaela Severa. They taught me compassion and they taught me discipline, sometimes at the end of a belt. My brother, you've heard about my brother, Michael Severa. He taught me courage beyond courage. I also want to recognize Charles R. Wall, who somewhere along the line saw something and gave me the shot. I want to recognize Jake Jaycox for all of his support that he gave me over the years. Deputy Chiefs John Bell, Ray Eisenberg, Billy Dean, Pat Gallagher, Tony Zuccaro, you know, they're the bulwark. They're the ones that really got the job done. I always said they were the real cops that did the real job. I signed the papers and got them in their direction. Most importantly, I'd like to thank Cindy Severa, who's sitting in the back. She's been there every step of the way through 42 years. She's been through everything that you've read, plus some others. Most importantly, when I walked in the door, she kept me grounded as a husband, as a father, and just as a citizen. So thank you so much for this. I greatly appreciate it. And you have an excellent police department, excellent city government, and I've said around the country now that I'm doing some speaking engagements, your cops exemplify the virtues of being a cop. Those young men and women every day who put on a bulletproof vest, who go to work with a fully loaded sidearm, they are the virtues of being a cop. Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you. We're moving on to a bid opening for non-exclusive franchise at Telecommunication Services. Okay, I have one bid in hand.
You need, Mayor, there's language there that you should read. The bid up, it should be there in your book.
Okay, bids for non-exclusive franchise agreement. Pursuant to Virginia Code 15-2, 2102, I will now summarize the bids that have been received for a non-exclusive franchise agreement for the purpose of installing, operating, and maintaining network facilities for wireless telecommunication services within the city's public streets and rights-of-way. One bid has been received. Simis Holdings LLC has bid the following: a 20-year franchise, and all installations will be underground, and the bidder will be solely responsible for paying costs of removal or relocation of its facilities, its public projects, if public projects necessitate removal or relocation. Are there any other persons who desire to submit a bid at this time?
Mayor, no one signed up.
There being no further bids, the bidding is closed. City staff has evaluated the bid received from Simis Holdings LLC and recommends that this company be granted the franchise. We will now open a public hearing for the proposed non-exclusive franchise agreement to install, operate, and maintain network facilities for wireless telecommunication services within the city's public streets and rights-of-way. Can we call for speakers?
And Mayor, just to note for the record, that is item under public hearing G3,
Okay.
non-exclusive franchise use telecommunication services Sims Holding. And we have one speaker, Barbara Messner. Ms. Messner?
Good evening. One of the main issues is due process, and we really do not have that much information. I looked up the contractor. This is for 5G, and I'm just opposed to all these telecommunications services. We don't even have Verizon in some areas, and now we're going to have 5G. So I just think we need to have more public input for these projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Going back for public hearings, number one, the lease of city property, 5 parking spaces located in the uppermost parking deck of the 31st Street parking garage to T-Mobile Northeast LLC.
We have one speaker signed up on all public hearing items, and that's Barbara Messner. Ms. Messner?
Okay, so you want me to speak on which one, Ms. Martins?
G1,
G1?
yes.
Okay. The lease of 5, sorry, but this is wet. The lease of 5 parking spaces at the 31st Street parking garage. The city of Virginia Beach used eminent domain abuse to take at least close down 10 businesses at 31st Street. And in that contract, we paid marketing, advertising, and legal, and we were supposed to get a parking garage for locals. And you're systematically removing parking all over the city. This has been going on since the mid-'90s. Yeah, you have, for the 31st Street, which we paid for most of that, and the entire Atlantic Avenue is valet parking for the hotel. Mr. Thompson transferred his deals to a new buyer. There's valet parking on 31st Street, and then several levels of that parking garage are used for the hotel. There's hardly any for the public. And when I drove home last night after shopping, I took a shortcut from Atlantic Avenue to 9th Street. The 9th Street garage, you're selling $70 a month parking passes to some people. It should be first come, first served parking. But the garage is closed. What about these people paying $70? Okay. And the buses are parking. Verizon is parking on the street, all their equipment all around 31st Street. Yeah, this is a picture of the parking garage with the red X's, and I don't know if you're renovating or whatever, but there's no parking in there. This is by the Harris Teeter on Arctic, and the school buses take up at least 2 spaces. School buses are all over the place. This didn't happen in the past. And back here is another huge truck and trailer. I didn't have a picture of that. And this is a giant semi-truck on Atlantic Avenue, in front of the Travel Lodge. There isn't access for the average person. Everything is commercial. So I strongly oppose the lease.
Thank you.
Ms. Master, if you'd like to stay up there, he'll call for the next public hearing. You're the only speaker signed up.
Okay, and this is for lease of public property. 420 square feet of right-of-way located on the intersection of Atlantic and Pacific Avenues at the entrances of the Oceanfront Marriott Hotel to the Oceanfront Investments LLC, a freestanding monument sign.
Yeah, to save time, I can read it. Amanda read it last time, I can read it. Lease of city property, the right-of-way, giving up another right-of-way, Atlantic and Pacific Avenue, Oceanfront Marriott, that received an extra $5.6 million on top of the $42 million for the Cavalier projects. For a freestanding monument sign. So I oppose taking away public right-of-ways, especially for private developers. The public right-of-ways should be for the citizens. Okay?
That's all at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, prior to going to, the consent agenda, I'm going to read the speaker's policy. I want to remind everyone that City Council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items. All other speakers, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers are reminded that comments during the formal portion of the meeting must be limited to the subject of the item that is being considered by council at the time you are called. When speakers are called on each item, the clerk will call for those individuals have signed up to speak. After those who have signed up to speak have spoken, the chair will ask if there are any other persons who wish to speak on the item at hand. Those speakers will be allowed to speak and will be asked to give their name, address, and telephone number for the clerk to record. We have several items with only one speaker signed up. As such, the city clerk will call the speaker and identify each item that they have registered on. The speaker will receive 3 minutes to comment on each item. Again, the speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter of the items they have signed up to address. Finally, I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chamber to be civil in their discussion and decorum. Whatever views you hold and wish to express, the City Council wants to hear from you and to ensure that all viewpoints and all persons are respected. The best way to do this is for all of us to strive for civility and respect. Okay, now I understand we have speakers?
We have one speaker signed up on multiple items. Is that, for the consent agenda, is that what you'd like to do now?
Yes, I would
Thank
like
you.
to do
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Ms. Master has signed up on all items that have not been pulled. So the first item is number 1.
Okay. As I said before, it's very difficult. You have meetings every single week. And the agenda doesn't go up right away. This one did go up Friday. Sometimes it doesn't go up over the weekend. And it's impossible to print 735 pages. So it's very hard, and the main reason I'm speaking is because if you don't speak, the items aren't even discussed. Amanda, if you'd repeat it again, which one? Pardon?
Under ordinance and resolutions, this is item 1.
Okay, because this is the one that I already spoke on.
This is for the ordinance and resolution, not the public hearing, ma'am.
Right. But it's It's on the lease for 5 years for T-Mobile with Northeast LLC for the 5 parking spaces which, in the garage, for installing and maintaining antennas and radio equipment. I can't imagine why a contractor would require parking spaces in a public garage. It's a public-private parking garage, but we should not be leasing these for people to do work. If you hadn't removed all the parking and all the parking garages and all the parking lots around the city are closed. If you go up to some of them, they're closed. They're filled with construction equipment, Rudy Loop, 19th Street, and you just voted to close roads. It's impossible to navigate. And to take away 5 parking spaces from the public for a contractor, I think is outrageous. Okay, 2, authorize a lease up to 5 years, Chicks Marina. Am I the only speaker on that one? That one's full. Pardon?
Master, when you finish an item, I will tell you which item is next. Number 2 is the next one you need to speak on. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, I fully expected that those people would be back again. I was just going to speak to support them. The city shouldn't be taking over land for more parking again throughout the city. From lease, execute agreement for up to 5 years with Chicks Marina, AKA Chicks Oyster Bar, for the non-exclusive use of 24 parking spaces. Some of these people have been using these spaces that have businesses, and they will, it's already crowded, so this is unfair to those people. And there are several that have spoken and written to y'all, so you're fully aware of how they feel. Okay?
Next item is number 3.
Okay, amend Section 7, Agricultural Reserve Program. Spoke on this one on the 10th. It's deferred from the 10th. Changes to the eligibility, can't even say it, requirement. Yeah, we no longer have the green line, and there's major, construction and uncontrolled growth past the green line. So I think the agricultural program that we need to have the public hearings and public input on these things to discuss them before they're voted on, especially during the pandemic, which, we have less access. And I appreciate all the comments by Mr. Solomon and Martha Therault, that we really do not have public access and public input. And we do send y'all letters. You don't reply. We give you input, basic common sense input, but you don't reply because that doesn't meet your idea of what our city should be like. Okay, 4, traffic calming for Kings Grant Road. Traffic calming, your idea is just to put up stop signs and roundabouts. It just slows down the traffic and creates more problems. You just need to control growth and take care of the reckless drivers in the city that are causing accidents. You can't turn on the news without there being an accident. We need more of the police on the street, and they used to direct traffic. I think that's really important to have prevention. Okay, 5 I'll pass. 6, support the 2021 legislative agenda adopted by the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. The planning should be done between the citizens and the city, not commissions. Okay, 7, declare November 15th to December 15th Buy Local Month. If you cared about buying local, we wouldn't be recruiting companies from other cities and other countries to come here and compete. Like Aldi's and Lidl's, they put Farm Fresh out of business. So it would be easy to buy local if we weren't subsidizing other people, including the breweries who are putting some of the restaurants out of business. They're all taxpayer subsidized by the city and state, over $4 million as of a couple years ago. Okay, 8. Request creation of single mobile portal, city services information requested by Councilmember Rouse. Okay, this is a good start, but it should have started in 2012. We have a contract with Cox and Verizon, and they're allowed to pass on the fees to the citizens. This is so we can have live feed, hopefully and it's not the staff. You have excellent staff for recording and taping these, and they were able to fix the closed caption. I thought somebody said there was somebody that did sign language, but I've never seen them before. But this should have been done a long time ago, and if it's just for this one temporary building, that's an issue, because we should be downstairs. There shouldn't be people in the next room. We should be in the big ballrooms, and we should have tables to set our things down. We shouldn't have to put them on the floor. So I think we need to make it comfortable for the people who come here, not just for y'all. Okay,
Next item is number 9, ma'am.
thank you. Authorize the city manager, good evening, Mr. Jahaney, to execute an amendment to the franchise agreement for valet parking at Town Center, which was also taken by eminent domain and taxpayer subsidized. We paid for 5 parking garages for Amada Hoffler. And a lot of those are just like the other parking garages. Certain floors are just for the tenants. And some of the tenants are Economic Development Authority that we pay for. We pay for them for the high-end rent there. And then the Rocks, Jeff McWhorters there was no contract. He was just given $100 million for a shuttle, a fancy shuttle from Town Center. Okay. And reduce it to 1 valet stand and reduce the fee to $12,500. Okay. It should be first come, first served, and we should have more parking. We should have parking shuttles, but you've used every inch of land for something commercial. And we should have parking shuttle for bus service, basic bus service. People need bus service, and, with the recent flooding, it just gets worse all the time. You talk about flooding year after year, decade after decade, but nothing is done. And when you keep building and filling cement and building towers, you create more flooding and you create beach erosion. The Westminster thing is atrocious over there. Okay, 10.
No, ma'am, no, that's been pulled. So if you'll let you know
Okay.
which one. So the next one is 11. Actually, the rest of the ordinance and resolutions you're the only speaker, and they have not been pulled. So you're fine from here on out, starting with
Okay.
11.
No, that's okay, thank you. And as I've said before, all the people that ran, we care about flooding, we care about crime, we care about everything. Where are they? I saw the article saying, what a great job everyone did that won. It's like when you own the media and the candidates don't really put up much of a fight or do anything, it's pretty easy to win. Okay. And I am trying to be civil, Mr. Dyer. Okay.
You're on number 11A, ma'am. You've been on.
Okay. Yeah. Housing and community development, neighborhood preservation, operating budget, $301,000, 301,000. Operating budget, emergency housing program. We've had an emergency with homeless in the city for decades. Brenda McCormick was hassled for trying to help the women and children. She was even thrown in jail for taking donations at her home to help them. Spent a fortune on design for the homeless shelter, and that's mostly administrative. $30 million, and it's first come, first served. There's 22 beds overnight for women and 29 for males, and it's whatever they can bring. Any personal belongings they have to fit in their seat, and they have to come back and sign in to go. So, the pandemic is just adding more people, who can't work and lose jobs. But $300,000, and, we've already spent $30 million, and you're putting people, I think, 500 a week in some select hotels. So I oppose to how the city spends money and their priorities. And I do hope that the new people that you've hired will take this to heart, because everyone is suffering and everyone matters. Okay, B, $15,500 from Homeland Security, emergency management for emergency response team. Okay, that's really not that much money. And another fireman was injured, and they're overworked. The police are overworked, and if you would slow down, we shouldn't have anything on the planning agenda for more short-term rentals. It's just more work for the police, and there's 450,000 residents, but there's different stats that you give, anywhere from 10 million to 19 million tourists every year. So our police have to take care of them also, and they travel all over the city. Okay. 125,000 Homeland Security. Technical rescue, hazmat. Okay, I don't have a problem with it. I just have a problem with the budget and the fact that y'all don't prepare. Okay, 12. This one's nearly $1 million. Transfer, ordinance to transfer, 990,576 within the 2020-2021 CIP program budget. And accept and appropriate 187,000. So from the Aquarium Foundation, Animal Care Center. We need to take care of humans first, and this is, CIP is city, it's not contracted out, so we're paying way too much, and the aquarium is for tourists, and that's, part of that's been open. Some things, the schools are closed, but the aquarium's open. It's just amazing how y'all decide. Okay, B, $141,850 in federal revenue, CIP, capital improvement project, traffic safety improvement. 3, to CIP, West Great Neck Road sidewalk. Okay, like I said, if the police were around like they used to be, we didn't have people, pedestrians being killed, bikers being killed. We need to be proactive to keep the citizens safe and the neighborhood safe. That's it, right?
The mayor needs to open the public hearing for planning, and you are the only speaker on multiple planning items as well.
Open a public hearing on planning.
Ms. Messer, you're the only speaker, 1 through 11,
Okay.
and 15, and 19 and 20.
Wait, did you say some were pulled?
So the only ones you're speaking on at the moment are items, let's do 1 through 11 first. How's that?
1 through 11.
Yes, ma'am, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And none of the applicants have come or...
Ma'am,
are
you're the
speak-
only person that signed
Okay.
up to speak, so
I'd like to finish my comment.
you're
Okay. Yeah. I think it's important that if the applicants aren't on WebEx and they aren't here, I don't understand.
Please.
I am.
Thank you.
I am. I'm speaking on all of. Okay. Subdivision regulations. Bayside District for a variance. Okay, like I said, I don't have all the information on that. I'm mainly interested in the short-term rentals. And 2 is very interesting. Donald H. and Diane F. Horsley. Mr. Horsley has not shown up for, he's on planning, and he hasn't been there for, I think, the last 3 meetings. So I just find this interesting. Let's see, a variance to Section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations, minimum 150-foot lot with 120-foot street requirements. So, okay. 3, another variance. And since I'm speaking on this, why can't we have a website with all of the information up there? Why do we have to download it at the last minute? And some of this, we should have all this information. Maybe more people would get involved if they had it in advance. I think Mr. Bellucci's brought that up before. But, it would help if, you emailed. If you have the information, you have my email. All of you have my email. Mr. Moss accidentally used his personal email recently, which, I didn't email him at his personal email. Okay. I'll skip 5. 6, I do want to mention. A conditional use permit for a family daycare home in Centerville. And I would hope that Ms. Wooten has checked this out, and that a lot of people are opening daycares, and they have to be regulated to keep the children safe. There's been a lot of incidents in their area. So I'm just saying that I hope that the city departments and Ms. Wooten, that's her area, that she's checked out the area and spoken to the neighbors to make sure there's no problems. Okay, 7. Valvoline instant oil change, conditional use permit, automotive services, 5100 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Kempsville District. One of the issues with all of these automotive places is is the oil change and getting rid of all of the waste. We have major problems with trash. I noticed that the waste management people are here and that we won't be getting the regular pickup. It's delayed a couple days. Their work grows with every development, everything you approve, even though some of this is, supposed to be, I think Bay Mechanical does some of these, there's several that do some of the pickup, but there's just way too much, trash and oil that goes into the waterways, into the street, and everyone doesn't take proper care of their, and that's Kempsville, so I would assume that that Miss Abbott has gone out there and, and checked on the location. Okay, 8, another auto repair, Cleveland Avenue. That is definitely, Cleveland is an industrial area, which is fine, but it's probably been 5 years since I was out there, and, it's pretty blighted. It's pretty blighted. So I think whoever, operates out there, even though it's industrial, it should be, our code enforcement shouldn't wait for people to call you. You should, take care of all these areas. Okay, Aerofit Human Performance, Home Occupation. Okay, a lot of people, like I said, I didn't look at this one specifically, but a lot of people have businesses in their home. Between the short-term rentals, you allow people to sell guns out of their home, have, subsidies for Dominion. Some neighborhoods have like 10 or 15 commercial vehicles in the neighborhood. It's not personal vehicles, it's commercial. I just think we need to slow down on everything. Okay, 10, conditional use permit, home occupation, Princess Anne District. I don't know what that is, but Miss Henley's usually pretty good, so I would like to think that she's aware of this applicant. 11, residential kennel, Munden Point Road, and that's Miss Henley's. And I would hope that she's checked into that too. Just because it's, in Pungo, if it's close to any homes, it could present a problem. Thank you.
Ms. Messer, if you'll stay there. The next item that, there's a few more, 15, 19, and 20, you're the only speaker on.
Okay. Now, I have to wonder if some of the people aren't here because of the, restricted access, the smaller room, and how many people know that there's a meeting every single week? Okay, 15, short-term rental, Atlantic Avenue, 21st and Atlantic. And Mr. Tahan, is there another picture that's a little bit larger? There it is. Okay. So that's on the ocean side or the land? That's on the ocean side, right? Okay. Yeah. So I just think that we have enough hotel rooms, and there's just too many short-term rentals. And as Ms. Henley has said many times, we don't have enough people to take care of these and to check them out. I think the last count was 2,600. So until, in the pandemic, how do we know who's coming in from where? As long as we're restricted, I think we should have a moratorium on these things until the pandemic is lifted and we know who's coming into the area. The schools are open for one day and then they're closed. How do we know? I saw kids at the Rudy Inlet Playground. None of them were wearing masks. You don't know where kids get sick. They don't necessarily get sick at school. So I think there should be a moratorium on these things until the pandemic and all these restrictions are lifted. You're letting other people come in and, okay. So 15 and 20.
19, ma'am, you just spoke on 15. 19 and 20.
19 and 20, okay. And you said no other speakers were here, and I'm glad because the person that, stood here for I think he took up 20 or 30 minutes arguing with y'all whether or not he would agree to the new restrictions, but since you don't have anyone to, and this is the Shadowlawn area, 811 Delaware Avenue, major problems, and those residents have come out and they've pleaded with you. And as ugly as this person has been to me personally and to some of the neighbors, the requirements now are that somebody has to answer the phone, not even physically be there if there's a problem. So, as I said, you shouldn't be approving short-term rentals, and these are just investments. I think he has 3. Okay, 20, conditional use permit, short-term rental, 40th and Atlantic. Okay. Which building is that? Is that Oceans 2 or is that the small ones? Oceans 2, right. And that, Martha Thuralt spoke on that. Those are tiny, and it's right next to the new Marriott and Ambassador, which we're subsidizing. And it's outrageous. These are too small to be short-term rentals, and there's no parking. They each have 1 parking space. And you know where all the parking goes. You've even suggested that they park at the garages. I just told you the garages don't have any space. They already use an overflow space. Yeah. Let's see. And you have free parking, quote unquote. Can't do 2 quotes with one hand. You say the beach is open for business, but it's not open for the residents who need parking to get there. It's only open for the people who already live there or who buy passes or who, I don't think any of y'all have to pay to park. But the size of these trucks that stop, well, we're not allowed to even stop on Atlantic Avenue to drop off our family while we drive around and look for a parking space. It's illegal for us, but it's okay for anything commercial on Atlantic Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, will you kindly do the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move for approval under the consent agenda. Under ordinances and resolutions, item 1, ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a lease for up to 5 years with T-Mobile LLC for 5 parking spaces at the 31st Street parking garage, array installing and maintaining antennas and radio equipment, noting that Mr. Moss is voting no. Item 2, ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a use agreement for up to 5 years with Chicks Marina Properties LLC for the non-exclusive use of 24 parking spaces located at Lynn Haven Municipal Marina, 13 spaces between 4 a.m. and 4 p.m., and 24 spaces between 4 p.m. and 4 a.m., noting that Mr. Moss, Ms. Abbott, and Ms. Henley are voting no. Item 3, ordinance to amend Section 7 of Appendix J, Agricultural Reserve Program, re-eligibility criteria, requested by Councilmember Henley, noting that Mr. Moss is voting no. Item 4, ordinance to amend City Code Section 21-230, re-inclusion of Kings Grant Road in the traffic calming program. Item 5, resolution to adopt the city's 2020 legislative agenda, noting that Mr. Moss is abstaining from item 14. Item 6, resolution to support the 2021 legislative agenda adopted by the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and request for General Assembly delegation to support these measures, noting that Mr. Moss is abstaining on that. Item 7, resolution to declare November 15th to December 15th, 2020 as Buy Local Month. Item 8, resolution to request the creation of a single mobile portal for city services and information. Item 9, ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the franchise agreement for valet parking at Town Center. Ray, reduce operations to one valet stand on Commerce Street and reduce annual fee to $12,500. Item 11, ordinances to accept and appropriate $301,109 from Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development to the FY 2020-2021 Housing and Neighbor Preservation Operating Budget, Ray Emergency Housing Programs. Item B, $15,500 from Homeland Security to the FY 2020-2021 Emergency Management Operating Budget to raise support for Virginia Beach Community Emergency Response Team Program. Item C, $125,500 from Homeland Security to the FY 2020-2021 Fire Department Operating Budget, Ray Purchase Materials and Equipment for the Technical Rescue, Swiftwater Rescue, and Hazmat Programs. Item 12, ordinances to transfer $990,576 within the FY 2020-2021 Capital Improvement Program budget and accept and appropriate $187,000 from Virginia Aquarium Foundation to CIP number 100435, Virginia Aquarium Marine Animal Care Center, Ray construction completion and relocation to the new Animal Care Center. B, $141,850 in federal revenue from CIP 100424, Traffic Safety Improvements 3 to CIP 100481, West Great Neck Road Sidewalk, and CIP 100212, Independence Boulevard Baxter Road Sidewalk.
Open a public hearing on planning.
Under planning, item 1, Thomas A. Brown for variance to section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations, Ray minimum lot area at Shell Road between 1412 Duck Run Court and 5145 Shell Road in the Bayside District. Item 2, Donald H. and Diane Horsley for a variance to section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations, Ray minimum 150-foot lot width and 120-foot street line frontage requirements at 3340 Ives Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 3, Ruth B. Wilson for a variance to section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations, Ray minimum upland acreage requirements for lot area at 865 and 877 Sandbridge Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 4, Hal J. and Deborah Woolard for a street closure, a 15-foot wide platted, unnamed, and unimproved alley totaling 375 square feet adjacent to 833 South Atlantic Avenue in the Beach District. Item 5, John S. and Deanna M. Hess for a street closure, a 15-foot wide platted, unnamed, and unimproved alley totaling 375 square feet adjacent to 837 South Atlantic Avenue in the Beach District. Item 6, Latifa Privet and Anthony Privet for a conditional use permit, Ray Family Daycare Home at 4494 Cherrywood Lane in the Centerville District. Item 7, Valvoline Instant Oil Change, John and Rita Ninos for a conditional use permit, Ray Automotive Service Station at 5101 Virginia Beach Boulevard in the Kempsville District. Item 8, McNeil Properties, Dare Associates for a conditional use permit, Ray Automobile Repair Garage at 4901 Cleveland Street in the Bayside District. Item 9, Aerofit Human Performance LLC, Isis and Robert Aerosmith for a conditional use permit, Ray Home Occupation at 1209 Funnell Street in the Bayside District. Item 10, Dale Wooden for a conditional use permit, Ray Home Occupation at 6336 Blackwater Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 11, Lewis Perrin for a conditional use permit, Ray Residential Kennel at 2121 Munden Point Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 15, Shelley Gale Dagenhart for conditional use permit, Ray Short-Term Rental at 2113 Atlantic Avenue, Unit 2B in the Beach District, noting that Ms. Henley, Mr. Moss, and Mr. Jones are voting no. Item 19, Justice Swango, Jason and India Swango Joint Revocable Living Trust for conditional use permit, Ray Short-Term Rental at 811 Delaware Avenue, District 6 in the Beach, noting that Mr. Moss, Mr. Jones, and Ms. Henley are voting no. Item 20, Lawrence and Suzanne Olazesco for conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 4005 Atlantic Avenue in the Unit 117 in the Beach District, noting that Mr. Moss and Ms. Henley are voting no. So moved, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if Mr. Moss wants to clarify his abstention on item 5 because I couldn't, no, I'm sorry, on item 6 because I couldn't really break it down the way you'd said earlier.
Yes, my abstention, I'll do them both, just so they'll be in the record. I have a standing letter from the Commonwealth Attorney with regards to the dome site development, and item 14 had two pieces. The first piece was a drive to a legislative change that's driven by the acquisition of private property, so I'm abstaining. There's another section that we're asking for a change, which I can vote in the affirmative for because I don't have a conflict. On item 6, within the Planning District Commission's legislative agenda, which they do not have any numerical numbers or paragraph numbering in their package, there's an item that's entitled offshore wind development. And because of my stock ownership and dividends in excess of $5,000, and Dominion Energy is a vested equity person in offshore energy off the coast of Virginia, I'm abstaining for that portion. And I assume the city attorney that I can make the records and minutes reflect I'm approving in whole with the exception of the part with offshore wind, which I'm abstaining.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. We have a motion
Second.
from Mr. Wood. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood, noting the nay votes and the abstentions.
Okay, thank you. Going back to ordinance and resolutions, item 10.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, I'd like to explain my no vote so the public will know why I dissent from the majority of the body, please.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. On item 1, this dealt with the parking spots, the 5 spaces. Basically, that works out to $9.87 a day to take a public space permanently on a long-term basis out of private use, though I understand that the group was releasing that out on an annual basis because they could legally do so. But I do believe taking a public asset out of public use demands more than a $10 a day premium. You can go park there for $10 a day, so why shouldn't we be getting a premium? So I'm voting no because I think we're undervaluing taking public assets out of public use. On the marina, I think we heard from the people. I think we are legally correct, but I think we are not on the highest of moral ground renegotiating that contract and breaking faith on the intent of what people thought they were getting. My position on agricultural reserve program is we're buying ahead of need, and that holds true. And the rest of the things stand as is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Moss. All right, moving on to item number 10. Okay, and that's ordinance to appropriate $37,303,277 from the fiscal 2019-20 school reversion funds to the Virginia Beach Schools fiscal 2020-21 operating budget and capital improvement program. Speakers.
The first speaker is Barbara Messner, and after Ms. Messner is Dwayne Arthur.
Okay, item 10, 36 million from the school reversion funds. That's slush funds that should have been used during the year. We have a lot of needs for our schools. And y'all had a meeting with the school board earlier. I didn't have time to watch that, a joint session. But a lot of the money for the schools should not be used for transportation to events. All the promoters should be in charge of, they should pay for the events. And our school buses and bus drivers, they shouldn't need money so bad that they're cleaning buses after events and driving around all hours of the night. And then the buses aren't ready for the kids in the morning. So I just don't like the way you have a budget. And this is the second thing. You had something on the agenda last week. So I'm opposed to 10. Is that the only one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
There are other speakers.
okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Dwayne Arthur, and after Mr. Arthur is Stanley Nicholson.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I fully commend the speed and gesture of this action to address some of the needs of the children, teachers, administrators of the Virginia Beach Public School system. However, I also request that you also address as swiftly the needs of the parents of some of those Virginia Beach public school students who are currently employed with the City of Virginia Beach Public Works and Utilities, and further, the Public Works and Utilities as a whole. To this end, we have forwarded a petition to the city manager, and all of you have a copy of it, and respectfully request an answer within 5 days. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Stanley Nicholson.
Good evening.
Good evening, how y'all doing?
No. It is.
One thing for sure, two things for certain. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. With there being 86 Virginia Beach public schools with $37 million laying around from last fiscal budget to next year's budget, with all that's going on with us essentials workers as public utilities, public work, fire, paramedic, and police, I feel there's a lot more that can be done with $37 million sitting around doing nothing. When you have people out here risking their life every day to support their family, to go home to a family for a city they can barely afford to live in. With that being said, I hope all y'all take what I say into consideration, sleep on it, and get back with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jason Smith. And then we had one additional speaker sign up, Denise Tautone, but I understand she is not here, correct, sir?
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, council. I'm in total agreement, supporting our schools with the funds that you have. But the fact of the matter is, COVID's rising. The cases are going up every day. The work that we perform and we do puts us at risk every day that we come to work. We're essential workers. We don't have the luxury of working at home. We have to perform our jobs in order to keep the city running. That's an important thing. Nobody wants us to shut down. We don't want to shut down. We don't want to go and stay home. We take pride in our work, but in order for us to take pride in our work, we think that 10% hazard pay should be included on every check. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I understand the last speaker, Denise Tautone, is not in attendance, but I feel like I need to call her name just in case. Denise Tautone?
Denise Towson? Okay.
I was informed she wasn't here. Sorry, that's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Wood.
Move approval.
We have a motion about a second. Mr. Moss, any discussion? Okay, vote's open.
Councilmember Abbott?
I'd like to vote aye, but I want to notate my abstention on items 1AI and 1AII within the ordinance.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Verlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you've approved the ordinance, noting Miss Abbott's abstention.
Okay, Ms. Abbott, can you explain your reasons for the abstention?
Yes, I have a disclosure letter on file. My husband's a teacher in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and I didn't feel comfortable voting on the bonuses that are
Okay,
in that
thank you very
ordinance.
much. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, reverting back to the planning items, okay, at this point, we're going to go with item number 12. GG Property Management LLC, Riddle Lane for conditional use permit, Ray, short-term rental at 713 Northgate Court, District 3, Rose Hall.
The first speaker is the applicant, Janice Rogers. And then after Ms. Rogers will be Clarence Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. First, I want to start off by just asking everyone to have an open mind as I kind of go through what the bigger picture or the broader picture of short-term rental is in our business model. We don't really see it. I heard a lot of comment about there's a lot of short-term rentals, there's not enough police, there's not enough watchkeepers, other short-term rentals. But in our business model, we kind of utilize short-term rentals for many different needs. Particularly, we look for longer short-term stays in the sense that most of our clients are either without a home because it got burnt down or water damage for a period of time where their main homes are getting repaired. So we work with insurance companies. Also, we have travel nurses where those stays are 13 weeks, which I know is a license is not required for that. And then we also have healthcare professionals that will help military families that are in transition of deploying or either waiting for a home or to purchase a home. So in the model, sometimes there are vacancies, meaning that there's no one renting for those 30, 60, 90 days. So we utilize shorter spans, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to kind of fill in that gap. So I just want everyone to have an open mind about what short-term rental is, because, you know, yes, some people in certain areas do it for the tourist, but that's not really our main business model. I know there's a lot of concerns and, you know, as far as regulations and meeting all of the application requirements, we did meet those with the staff approval. However, the Planning Commission did recommend a denial because of, I guess the best way to say it, for lack of better words, is lack of knowing the process of registering. So I provided some additional information that should be in your packet regarding a timeline of when I got involved with the owner in trying to register and adhere to the actual, to be compliant with the city regulations in terms of registering for a business license, as well as putting in the application with the planning department. And there was a little confusion on, okay, were we approved? Because we started getting tax notices to pay your occupancy taxes, which I did see a couple of prior meetings where it was discussed, where there was a little confusion on when does the approval take place, which is technically once the meeting occurs. So backing up to the Planning Commission presentation, there was a lot of things that I wasn't aware of because I am a consultant to the owner. But after that meeting, I did have a conversation with some of the complaints and the concerns. One concern was Mr. Wilson, the neighbor, car was hit during the time of them not properly being registered. It did happen at 3 a.m. He made a statement at that particular meeting that that the person would have left, but he immediately contacted the owner because at this point I was not involved. I was not a contact person. The owner stated that he did get in touch with whoever hit his car, and they came out immediately to fix that issue. The other issue that one of the neighbors, Mr. Wilson, talked about was noise and privacy concerns. Mr. Wilson was paid $2,100 to put up a fence. And he actually didn't have any other complaints once the privacy side of his house fence went up. So the owner didn't think there was any other issues with noise or complaints. So I don't think it's an issue of not being compliant. It was just an issue of not knowing and not knowing the rules. I manage several short-term rentals. This is my first time registering one with the City of Virginia Beach. But we have a very different model. And so I think, you know, taking into the account that, yes, there were some issues in the beginning with with not knowing the rules, but then the owner reaching out to our company to adhere to the regulations, purchasing a survey. They spent $400 on that, getting the business license, $50, $300 for the survey, and then $2,100 to appease to the neighbor. You can see that they're working to be compliant. And even paying taxes. When I told them, well, no, you're not supposed to be renting, but did you? Yes. Okay, well, if they did send you taxes, pay that. So I just want to give a bigger picture of what short-term rental is in our world for GG Property Management. I also gave some examples of some of our properties. You can see they're really nice properties. People like to stay. They like to come for, it's a home away from home. But again, we do have that business model. It's nice to have options so that if one of our owners don't have a 30-day or a 60-day tenant, we have other options to get them revenue for that location. I think for the most part, I covered most of everything I wanted to say. We do vet our guests. For example, we did get an inquiry. This is obviously in a different city. There's a lot of college students who are now, because they're not on campus, they want to band together and get houses. We didn't think that was a good idea. So we had, you know, contracts for three months for the students to come and study together. But we just said no because we were afraid of the parties and the type of clientele that we don't serve. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Clarence Harris, and after Mr. Harris is Barbara Messner.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir, and good evening, council members. My name is Clarence Harris. I'm a property manager at GG Property Management, along as a certified public accountant and 10-year business partner with Janice Rogers, who's also a CPA. We believe our short-term rental, when done correctly, and we do believe we're one of the companies that does this correctly, what we do is we provide solutions that span a broad array of different beneficiaries, the property owners. You know, otherwise they may have a house that's sitting that's not making any money. Well, we provide a solution where they can keep their house. In addition to that, as an operator of a short-term rental, in order for us to provide the best experience for our guests, our properties have to be maintained in the best state that it is, on the outside and the inside. So we actually help contribute to keeping our neighborhood safe because we are always maintaining our presence, which, you know, increases property values as well. Another thing we do, we provide solutions for those that are in temporary placements. Like myself, my house burned down April 30th, and I recently had a guest in the last week at one of our properties in Hampton. They're going through the same thing, insurance displacement, their house burned down. I related to them, and they were able to stay in our house, and they loved it. So we provide these different situations. So whether it's, we had one guest that came, they were working on infrastructure, doing solar panels, and they loved our facility. So we'll, as Janice stated, we've had travel nurses, doctors, folks coming in for funerals. Some folks feel a lot safer being inside of a home instead of something like a hotel where we can stay, you know, not have to worry about the risk of catching COVID. We can stay in a combined home. And some of the things that we do in terms of our vetting process, well, you know, sometimes short-term rentals can have the bad association of being the party place. So what we do to discourage that, we properly vet everyone from the gate. We have external cameras on each sides of our properties. That's one of the procedures that we implemented, so we can see what's going on. We communicate with our neighbors. I make sure my neighbors have my direct phone number. I see external cameras. Before any bookings, our guests they have to acknowledge, hey, there's no parties. We let them know there's absolutely no parties. You will be immediately kicked out, and we have all those protective measures in place as well. So I would just hope that everyone up here, you know, is very open and can see the benefits that comes with the short-term rentals, and it does provide the solutions. It makes sure that the homeowners, that they continue to have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next speaker is Barbara Messner, and after Ms. Messner is Michael Wilson.
Seems like the timer wasn't working for some speakers. Anyway, we've had this discussion about, you know, people wanting to cash in on the short-term rentals since it was advertised, you know, by the promoter, city's partner, and something in the water. Some of the $250,000 taxpayer dollars that were given to him, he went on TV nationally and told people to, you know, invest in Airbnb. This is strictly investment. This is in Rose Hall, and I appreciate the three people who, you know, gave their reasons why they voted no. And I can't understand, it's beyond me why everyone else is for these. Especially Mr. Berlucci, who seemed so concerned, and Mr. Tower, who was concerned at one time. I guess now that the elections are over, you don't have to show any concern. But, you know, to say that people prefer to stay in a neighborhood versus a hotel, we have hotels for a reason. You know, they have security. Actually, they have more security than most of us because that's where the police are 90% of the time, and that's where a lot of the... Okay. And the public works people that were here and the police that were here, you know, when you have something that's operating like a hotel and you're renting out to different people all the time, you know, that's extra trash, extra cleaning, and our public works people, you have more events added. On top of the events that you took away, there's 2 new events. The city's paying for all of these, and Parks and Rec, they have to go there and clean up and maintain it. The same thing with Public Works, and they told you that they're overworked, they're tired, and you're just going to take somebody's word that they're vetting these people? They make a lot more money renting to a doctor and a nurse than they do to some other people. But, yeah, I meant to show these earlier because you're planning more events down there, and all these are, you're using them to sell alcohol, and our public works and our police they clean up and they're free crowd control. So I oppose the short-term rentals.
Next speaker is Michael Wilson, and after Mr. Wilson is Rick Cameron.
Welcome, sir.
And in the last year, I have seen the cops called on my road at least 6 times. I live here for 17 years. I hadn't seen the cops on my road, man, that many times in the 17 years I lived there, since they opened this place. I work for the city of Virginia Beach. I'm a public utility worker. I can be called out at all hours of the night. When my sleep is messed up, I go out there, I can make a wrong decision, and I can get one of your family members hurt because I am a crew leader. If I out there without my proper rest, I could get somebody hurt. I've been woken up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to people out there arguing, babies crying, cops sitting out in front of my house. I don't know what happened. My car got hit out there. I put up a fence for the man. I thought that was supposed to be a long-term rental place, but it turned out to be a party house for the young kids that come in. Since the meeting we had last time, and they voted no on it, the place been rented out 3 times to short-time people. When they said no there, I thought they were supposed to stop that. This here was underneath their control, their thing. It was supposed to be stopped, and it was supposed to have been for long-term. Now, this here happened. I'm kind of mad about it. I wanted your people. Look out for me. I need my sleep. I don't need to be hassled with this here. Matter of fact, I need a definition of what y'all long-term would be if it is for long-term and not to have it for short-term. That's all I need to say about this here place. Okay?
Yeah, Mr. Moss.
Mr. Moss, could you turn your microphone on, please?
Thank you, I always forget that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
If I heard your testimony correctly, you're stating that after the Planning Commission had acted on this application,
Yes.
they continued to rent the application, rent
Yes.
the property, and they rented it before the Planning Commission as well?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Rick Cameron, and he's the last speaker, so the applicant will have an opportunity to come back up after Mr. Cameron.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I live on the other side of this property, and I listened to the 2 people that spoke first, and they said that they talked to everybody. Nobody's talked to me. This place has been a cesspool of people that don't respect anybody of anything that's going on in a neighborhood. I myself have called the police 3 times, one at midnight, once at 3 in the morning, once at 4 in the morning, because of the partying that goes on. And I'm not going to go over there. I mean, there's 15, 20 or more people in this place at a time. And granted, they have rented it longer term for people that like fire or flooding or whatever, and that they're using this as to get their house fixed. They're staying here, which is, those people are great. But when they do it for the short term to fill in their spots, these people are very disrespectful to just about anybody around. They're there to party. They are there to have a good time. They are not worried about it being a residential neighborhood. They don't care. They are there to enjoy themselves. The people that are staying there now have been there, I think, because of a house fire or something. And there's other people there that were there for being transferred overseas, and they stayed there because they had already sold their house. But for these people to get up and say that they've talked to the residents, I live right next door. Nobody has ever come to me and said, hey, what's your concern about this property? My concern is I don't like to be woken up at 3, 4 in the morning listening to music pounding in my house. I should not have to listen to their music or be awoken at 4 o'clock in the morning because there's a fist fight in the backyard and kids are screaming. Neighbors are all coming out from everywhere watching these fights. They sit in the front yard with their headlights on, with their music pounding in their vehicles at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's just, I shouldn't have to put up with that living in a residential neighborhood. I've been there for 25 years.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
The applicant, Ms. Rogers, if you'd like to come up for a 3-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. What I can say is that, yes, there was no denial. I actually mentioned the fact that the owner was not aware or did not have knowledge of the process to be properly registered. So prior to the Planning Commission, this was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, there were rentals that had immediately stopped before the sign was put up. After the Planning Commission that I was at, that Mr. Wilson was at, and other neighbors were at, there has been no short-term rentals of this property. I can say that for a fact because now we are handling the rentals. Mr. Wilson spoke to the owner. The owner had a birthday. It was his birthday. He was at the property with his family. It was not rented. There's no violation there. And correct, the Bostics, the couple that are there now, their house did burn. They're there for a couple of months. And any prior guests calling to the police, they were not under our management. We vet the guests strongly, and we haven't had complaints with any other property that we manage. I think the disconnect here, unfortunately, is the owner not realizing the regulation and trying to do it on their own versus engaging us and now hiring us, trying to take the correct steps to be compliant. And they're not against it. They've put the money out there. They've agreed to even expand the driveway. I think they've gone above and beyond by even paying Mr. Wilson to put a privacy fence up when he did have the complaints. So I really hope under our management, we can have the opportunity to work in the city of Virginia Beach with our business model. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have
Mr.
one
Moss.
question, if I could. I'm trying to understand, when you say not registered was at the time, does not registered mean having not applied for a conditional use permit, but had not registered with the Commissioner of Revenue and were operating without paying the requisite lodging taxes?
So I think it was a miscommunication in both. So first, operating without applying through the Planning Commission, then applying, because the first step is to get a license and to register for the tax. Once you register for the tax, you start getting notices to pay your taxes. So there's a miscommunication there when they received that notification saying, hey, report your monthly taxes, thinking that they were approved. Then, me educating them and saying, no, we still have to go to the Planning Commission, then it has to go to City Council. That's the research I have found with City of Virginia Beach. So it's kind of both, not registered at all, then receiving a letter from the city saying, hey, you're not registered, you need to register. So they immediately stopped, went and registered, or actually I assisted with them registering, and that's when they started receiving notices to pay the taxes. So when they started receiving notices, they were under the impression that they were approved. Then as I was doing the application, I educated them on, no, you're not technically approved. Because our agreement was we would not take over everything until we received the approval through the council meeting.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Anyone else? Ms. Abbott?
I have a question for Mr. DeHaan.
Excuse me,
Oh,
can
no,
you
I'm
come
sorry,
back?
for staff.
Okay,
That's my
never mind,
question
thank you.
for staff.
Sorry.
Next.
Are we on staff or not?
Go ahead. You might have the very same question I have.
Mr. DeHaan.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure you are ready for this question, but between September 9th, which I think was the Planning Commission meeting, and today's date, do we have any record of it being rented?
From the sources that we have noted that their last document today was over 60 days ago.
Okay, and then have we had any, I don't know if you've checked on this, but have we had any calls to the house from through emergency services?
Not, so and this is where we're trying to figure out this disconnect, because if there was a party, that doesn't necessarily translate to there's a short-term rental, so we don't normally would get that
Sure.
report to us. So based on our review in our system, we have received no zoning complaints that have come to our system.
Thank you.
Okay, yes,
My
Mr.
question
Moss.
is slightly different. My understanding is that when people go to the Commissioner of Revenue's office to register, get a business day because they're going to be a short-term rental, that there's something in that process that tells them, oh, you got to go do this too. Am I mistaken, or does that actually happen?
That does happen now after the gaps that were found at the beginning of the process. We do have a point where it stops, and they do have to come see us if they don't meet the requirements.
So at the time, because I didn't get a timeline as to when, so at the time this, people out of not knowing, did the gap exist at that time?
No, because this application has not been delayed that long, so they would have been in a point where they were, I should say this, staff requires, when we take the application in, that they also go ahead and apply for their business license, just in case they have been operating and they need to report something to the city. So part of the process, the staff does point them to say, you need to go check with the Commissioner of Revenue if you need to pay for your business license and previous taxes.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Berlucci.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move for denial, and if there's a second, I would just like to make a
Second.
brief statement to explain.
Second.
Mr. Berlucci.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone who came to speak this evening and share your perspective and experiences. And I also would like to really begin my remarks by stating that I did have a chance to speak with Ms. Rogers, and I told her during that conversation that I would keep an open mind, and I have. I have every confidence that she and her colleagues provide an excellent service and that they manage short-term rentals throughout the region responsibly, professionally, and very well. And I'm sure that they would do that here. However, my view is that the problem is, first and foremost, that there is opposition from neighbors. And I think that opposition was expressed very fairly, very reasonably, and it's our responsibility to take that opposition very seriously. And they do have a right to a peaceful enjoyment of their property, of their home, and to get a good night's sleep and enjoy their home peacefully. Second, when we look at a map of this neighborhood, there is, in this radius, which I'm not sure exactly how far it is, there are 2 other short-term rentals that are registered. So they haven't been approved through the conditional use permit process, but they are registered. So I assume they may be grandfathered or have been registered before the regulations have been considered and then refined. But really, what it reflects is that this is not a neighborhood where short-term rentals exist with any abundance. This is a traditional residential neighborhood, and it's our responsibility to protect it. And so, having said all that, and I could go further, I think the most reasonable choice here, noting that I have sure they do a great job, is that this just isn't the best use for this neighborhood, and so that is why I recommend denial.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we are ready for the vote.
And the motion is to deny. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, the application for GG Property Management is denied.
Okay, moving on to planning item number 13, Shelley Arnaldi for a conditional use permit for short-term rental at 3921 Whooping Crane Circle, District 4, Bayside.
The applicant is Shelley Arnaldi, I'm sorry, the first speaker. And then after Miss Arnaldi will be Barbara Messner.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'll try to make this quick. So as you see, I'm applying for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental. I would like to say also, I hope you'll keep an open mind. I haven't communicated with anyone except for emails, and I don't know if they've received you, but I have forwarded several notes from neighbors, and I do want to focus on substantiated information. And I do want to say that my request and my permit is based on my home and my home value and my keeping my property up. It is not based on it being it is a service to the community as well, but it is 100%, my focus is keeping the condition of my property up, which in turn benefits the neighbors. So that's what started the process. So my application, as you can see, was recommended for approval by the zoning inspector because I meet all the qualifications under the ordinance. During the Planning Commission, several neighbors, Civic League members, came to voice their complaints. All of the complaints I can address right now are anecdotal, and they were not substantiated events that happened. I furnish the home for myself. I use it for myself. I monitor the use. I'm very concerned about who stays in it. I was so pleased with the quality of guests, and my house is in great condition because of it. So the complaints of noise, our neighborhood is not a traditional residential neighborhood. And if you drive down the street, you will see there's nothing traditional about it. There are 3+ cars and 3+ adults living in most of the units. This is something that there is one family in our cul-de-sac of 26 units. And I spoke to the mother yesterday, and she provided a letter of support. She's got 3 children, and she supports the use of my house as a short-term rental. And as I said, I also use it myself. She had no instances, no troubles. She recognized it was a short-term rental, and there was no factual information, no noise, no trash that she had witnessed, and she lives there full-time. So I did want to address some things that you're going to hear because, like as I said, they're not factual and they're not substantiated. I did go out on Nextdoor several times asking for surveys and neighborhood input, and the only input came from the 3 people that you're probably going to hear from today. It was the president of the Civic League, another person from the Civic League, and my immediate neighbor who I communicated with this entire time that I furnished the home. So, as I said, I've improved the parking situation. I restrict parking. I vet the people. It's all families over 25 years old, and all the reviews have been great. So I am not bringing the value down in the neighborhood, and in fact, I'm improving it. I think I sent you pictures with cars that have been parked for 3+ months with covers over them, just abandoned vehicles on the grass and boats in the grass. I mean, this is not a traditional family neighborhood. And I can say confidently that the use of my home now is in far better condition than it was when I had 3 long-term renters with 3 cars who also had parties, and I had no control over it. So I do want to address, one thing was mentioned about a trash can fire. There was a fire pit in the backyard. I meet all the fire codes. I've had it inspected. I absolutely have abided by every ordinance and every requirement. So, like I said, there's never been a party. The police have never been called. I myself have witnessed parties and requested the noise be turned down. So that is absolutely, none of these statements about my home and the use of my home are true if they're saying that I'm bringing the property value down. So I will just say in conclusion, I hope that you will consider what you're hearing and all of the documentation I provided, that I've been open and transparent, and my 100% focus is maintaining my property. And I don't believe I can do that if I go back to long-term renting, because essentially they end up subletting because the setup of the home is set up in a way that they want to sublet, and it ends up just being very difficult to maintain. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner. After Ms. Messner is Charles Hartman.
Good evening. It's noted here that the Planning Commission has denial. And if this person can't control a long-term rental person, why would they be able to control short-term rental? And just because other people might be renting, if it's a residential neighborhood, it's a residential neighborhood. And, the city worker, who can't sleep at night, a lot of people aren't city workers. A lot of people, they have problems with their neighbors. The police are overworked. Mr. Jones usually goes out to see these, and I just think to say that you notified people by next door. I'm not on next door. Everyone isn't on next door. Everyone in the neighborhood should have received something, and it affects everyone. It doesn't just affect your neighborhood. It affects traffic. It affects the police having to be called. So I would appreciate, a discussion on, why the planning had a denial. And thank you.
The next speaker is Charles Hartman. And Mr. Hartman, will you confirm that you're representing the Civic League?
I sure am.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Chuck Hartman. I'm the president of the Arizona Bay Civic League, and as Ms. Arnaldi mentioned, I am requesting that you oppose this STR permit. I was here for the October 20th meeting of the City Council. I spoke about Arizona Bay and our restricted covenants and how granting this Ocean Park short-term overlay district would create a chaos for us because we had no way we can enforce our restrictive covenants. We're in opposition to this applicant. This was actually the applicant that got us completely familiar with all the minutiae of city ordinances and procedures. When she started running an illegal STR a year ago, that's August of 2019. I spent hours trying to find out where she had been approved by the Planning Commission on all the minutes of the Planning Commission, only to find out she had never even applied for a permit until December. So, mind you, we're a volunteer board. We exist on volunteer dues. All we're trying to do is preserve the neighborhood aspect of Arizona Bay. Now, she can say it's a non-traditional neighborhood, and that it is. It's high density. I mean, it is the highest density STR location I believe the Planning Commission has ever put up on that board. I'm sure there's some places in Old Beach or something that might compete, but that area is more amenable to short-term rentals. In this case, Arizona Bay, it's 40% long-term rentals and 60% owners. Now, we have crystal clear restricted covenants that restrict short-term rentals to 30 days or rentals to 30 days or longer. The applicant was aware of this. She's a 22-year resident. She says that she's doing this to improve the neighborhood, but all she's doing is inciting anger, angst, and upset amongst the neighbors. I don't know how she found this one woman with 3 kids that approves of her actions, because I'm telling you now, you'll have neighbors here and on the phone, they're going to tell you differently. So I strongly urge you to reject this applicant's request for a short-term rental, just as the Planning Commission did. Now, we were there to enforce the restricted covenants, but we also believe that the land use that varies for short-term rentals is a bad idea. Parking is our #1 issue. There are only 7 public parking spots on Whooping Crane Court for 26 units. 7 public parking spots for 26 units. Those cars she says that were abandoned, they could be owned by military members that are deployed. I don't know. We don't go out like the busybody neighborhood people on a Geico commercial yelling violation, violation, violation. We only step in for the big stuff, and for us, this is big stuff. We need to not have Arizona Bay become a STR destination. It is close to the beach, but the developer specifically put in writing that anybody that moved into Aries had to understand they cannot rent their house out for less than 30 days. The short-term rental process has enabled this to happen because people can now stand behind the short-term rental regulations and say, screw the restricted covenants. The city says I can do this, I'm going to do it. Please vote against this applicant, and thank you.
Hang on, we got a question for you, sir.
Come back.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Hi, thank you for coming out to speak. So
You're
are you a POA or a condo association?
We're actually a civic association, which puts us at a very unique disadvantage because we were formed before the HOA Act of Virginia was put into law. So we don't have the ability to fine or censure or do any sort of thing that the HOA can do. All we can do is shame, inform, and go to court. We've spent $2,500 so far in legal fees to stop this from happening, and it's another $7,500 if you don't reject this person's application for us to go to court and pay for 3 court days with our law firm.
So where are your, I'm just curious, where, and I'm a realtor too, so.
Yes.
Where are your restrictive covenants? How are they?
Well, in this case, they're recorded as though they're an HOA.
Is it part of the deeds?
Yes.
Is part of everybody's deed?
Yes, we had a title search done on Ms. Arnaldi's property to ensure that her deed was indeed subject to these restricted covenants. This was part of the whole legal research we did before I dare step up to this podium and oppose this. Her deed is in fact marked, or however they do it, recorded with these restrictions. And one of the restrictions is 30-day minimum rental period. There's also restrictions on siding, paint, exterior appearance, and fences. All right, but the 30-day rental period is the thing that will get a lot of people to a Civic League meeting. Trust me.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for coming forward.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Stacy Kellum.
Oh.
No, Councilwoman Wilson covered the question I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moss.
Thank you. Stacy Kellum. And after Ms. Kellum is Alyssa Grierson.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm Stacy Kellum, and I live next door attached to Miss Arnoldi's short-term rental. It has been rented, they said August of 19. I believe that it was rented as early as December of 18, based on the coming and going of the traffic I saw there. I actually saw her long-term renters pack up and move their stuff out while people came and stayed for extended weekends and holidays. And it wasn't Miss Arnoldi. I'm in opposition. It was denied by the Planning Commission at the October 14th meeting, and it was further upheld to deny short-term rental by way of the rejection of the Shore Drive West corridor in that overlay project. Having short-term renters, it just introduces crime to the neighborhood, the potential for, child predators, drugs. It doesn't bring any safety to our streets. It negatively contributes to the overpopulated and congested court that we live in. There are only 26 units in there. And just to the general streets in our neighborhood, as they're very winding and very tight. It imposes a potential hazard for first responders in the event of a neighborhood emergency, and it introduces year-round noise, trash, vandalism, and other concerns associated with vacation partiers. It imposes a burden on our neighbors to oversee what's going on over there, as Ms. Arnoldi lives in Northern Virginia. She's not available at the drop of a hat. I don't know what her next plans are for the property. It was listed on Zillow last week for $2,600 a month for December to May, and then it was listed on VRBO for $115 per night for 32 days from December 1st to January 2nd. At any rate, that's $4,600 a month. So $2,600 a month, $4,600 a month. I don't know, it's not beneficial for our neighborhood, and I'm urging you to please support denial of this short-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Alyssa Grierson. And after Ms. Grierson, Jill Broom, who will be speaking via WebEx.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Alyssa Grierson. I actually live across the street from the property. I've lived there, well, I've lived in Aries on the Bay neighborhood for almost 20 years. I've lived on Whooping Crane for over 10 years. I have never met the woman that owns the property across the street. She's never come over, introduced herself, never, said, this is what I want to do with the property. And she has, rented it out 2 and 3 nights. And it has just become a problem because we don't know who's coming and going from there. There have been a lot of issues. I could go on and on and on about it. And she is not living here, Virginia Beach, so she can't do anything about the problems that we've had to deal with, because we have dealt with loud music, parties, everything. I mean, just the same old thing. And this is a residential neighborhood, even though she says it's not, it is. And one of our other biggest concern is the coronavirus is getting worse. And I don't see a cleaning crew coming there to clean the house, so I don't know who's doing any of that. I am speaking also for my next door neighbor who could not be here because of coronavirus, she can't be out. And she was denied October 14th, I think we were here, and she definitely did rent it out that weekend of the 16th and 17th. Just asking you to deny this. Like I said, I do know the woman that she spoke to that has a small children. She probably didn't explain the situation, because she does have very small children, and they're always running around, and it's just not, it's not a good situation. And parking is horrible. Actually, my son's car is parked out front, and somebody accidentally hit the car and then took off and drove away. And so now I have a dent in my son's car. And this is stuff that we don't want to have to deal with it. And I am not on the Civic League board, as she stated that I was. I'm not. I just live in the neighborhood and want it to remain residential. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be via WebEx, Jill Broom. Ms. Broom, if you'll pause 2 to 3 seconds before beginning your comments, and we will be able to hear you. We can't keep the feed open, so if you'll just begin your comments after pausing 2 to 3 seconds. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners and Mayor Dyer. My name is Jill Broom, and I live at 2373 Rookery Way in Aries on the Bay. I want to voice my concern in opposition to granting a short-term rental conditional use permit to Shelley Arnoldi or any other address in Aries on the Bay. This is a high-density, very congested neighborhood of mostly townhouses and a few single-family homes. We are one of the few neighborhoods on the bay that have on-street parking, and And it was built at a time that did not envision the number of vehicles that people have today. Plus, having some of the units with 3 bedrooms and 3 baths make them attractive as long-term rentals with multiple tenants and multiple cars. We have been concerned for a long time about the ability of emergency vehicles to get through the neighborhood quickly. And actually, we requested a parking study some years ago that resulted in them placing up no parking signs around all the intersections of the neighborhood and ceasing parking in one of our cul-de-sacs, actually all of our cul-de-sacs except one. I have been a resident of Aries since 1997, and over time, the parking and traffic situation has become much worse. What has changed over time also is the number of families with children in our neighborhood. The combination of these things makes adding more congestion as a result of permitting short-term rentals a really bad idea. Ms. Arnoldi stated that her reason for turning to short-term rentals had much to do with the fact that she's had renters that did not take good care of her property. I have 4 rentals, 2 in Virginia Beach and 2 in Florida that I manage that are long-term rentals. It seems to me that much of her problems have more to do with the fact that she is not managing her properties to protect them, such as doing periodic protections that are permitted under most leases. You also should consider that Miss Arnaldi began her short-term renting 4 months before she finally applied for this permit, and that she has not, as I understand it, purchased the necessary liability insurance prior to her application. That I understand is a requirement. So, I'm sorry. It's true that rentals in our neighborhood tend to increase the number of cars parked on the street, long-term rentals. And we can't change the number of places that have long-term rentals, but you can help by not making it worse. Please do not add to the congestion of this neighborhood by permitting any short-term rentals. Thank you very much.
Ms. Arnoldi, if you'd like to come up for a 3-minute rebuttal.
Okay, I guess I'd like to address a few things that were said that were really not true. I have been very transparent. I communicated with the planning office as soon as I decided I was going to convert the property. I spoke with them. I did not know the requirements. I didn't understand the taxes. As soon as I did, I called them. I paid everything up to the time that I started renting, which was the summer of 2019. I told the neighbor I was not doing anything secretive. I have a copy of the covenants and deed in the same, I believe it's between the developer and the city of Virginia Beach in 1985. I don't believe it was intended to restrict the use of the term of the rentals. It also says that leases are restricted to single families. So, my interpretation of this lease is not to restrict the amount of time. It's, to not have it be a summer rental like Sandbridge or a development timeshare community. That's what I think it is. That was my interpretation. That's my legal interpretation. So I absolutely have not been renting it. I've been letting friends and family use it. It's on VRBO for 30 days or longer. It's on Zillow for 30 days or longer. I'm following all the requirements. These people are very interested to hear how I'm using it. I'm available. They have my number. I can explain who's been in there every single day. So these things that they're saying are just patently false. And I understand it's difficult. I've seen everybody who hears complaints basically says they don't want to get involved, but really this seems to be like a huge infringement on my ability to keep my property in good condition. And I hope you will consider the facts.
Any questions? Mr. Jones.
Where do you live?
I live in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay, and do you have another residence down here anywhere?
No, I purchased this property when I was in the military in the 90s, and I moved overseas and with the military, and I worked overseas as a federal civilian for over 10 years. And I came back to work in Northern Virginia. I just never gave the property up, thinking that I would come back to move. So I live in Alexandria, and I hope long-term to come and retire here. That's why I've been trying to maintain this property.
So if there is a complaint about the property,
I have a property manager and a handyman available, and I've used them several times. They've come within 30 minutes. I have had issues. I've had water flooding and things like that, and I repair them immediately. I need that. It's important to me.
were you aware of the covenants, of the areas on the bay?
Well, I did the research too, and I have them. That's why I interpret them differently. You know, I discussed it, I had a discussion with their lawyer that they sent. We have an open dialogue where I wrote them back. As I said, it also says leasing is restricted to single families, and I don't believe that's the intention because there are, half the units have roommates. You know, it's 3 adults with 3 cars full-time. So I don't believe that was the intention when they wrote these restrictive covenants. So, you know, the Civic League is not a mandatory organization. Most people I know in areas on the Bay don't take it seriously. Obviously, a few that are here taking the time to object do. But there are, you know, 229 townhouses and another 50 single-family homes. And yeah, I do believe if you surveyed the majority of them, most of them really wouldn't care. And several of them would support it. People are interested in having the right to use their properties as long as it maintains the peaceful enjoyment. And I agree with that. But to claim that I've had parties or problems from my house is patently false. I have cameras, and I can find people if they have parties. So I haven't been doing anything secretive. And like I said, my goal is just to keep the property in good condition so that one day I can possibly use it when I retire.
Are you registered with the Commissioner of Revenue?
I am.
When did you register?
In December of 2019. I wasn't aware of it. I read the ordinance. It's a little confusing. I saw the requirements. I started to work through it. I spoke to someone at the planning office. I went to visit them. At that time, there was not a deadline. He didn't explain any urgency to be registered, so I was following the rules, and I also wasn't aware of the taxes. So when I did learn, I reached out to them. I wrote to them. I paid all the back taxes, and I started getting bills and paying ever since then.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jones. Okay, Ms. Wilson.
Question.
I just wanted to ask our attorney about these restrictive covenants. Is there any, if, not just this, or I'm talking about any, if there's a POA or anything like that, if the city granted a short-term rental for something that the property itself was not allowed to, how does that affect the city?
Ms. Wilson, the zoning and any conditional use permit that you grant is completely a separate issue from title issues and restrictions in covenants or deeds. So it should not have any impact one way or the other on what is permitted or not permitted under those covenants. And the city and our advice, consistent advice to the council has been to decide the issue based on the planning and zoning issues rather than on property rights issues included in deeds and covenants.
So those things really then would be, let's say it was a condo association, would be between the condo association and the property owner, or the homeowners association and the,
Correct.
and the city wouldn't be involved in that.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else at this point? Ms. Abbott,
I have a question for Mr. Tahan.
by all means.
Yes, ma'am.
I did look up the property on VBRO, and I did see that it is restricted to the 30-day minimum. Have there been any rentals shorter than that period, or we have any ability to tell?
The applicant has changed the listing. It was pulled down at the end of October to be 30 days. I haven't checked all of the screenshots that we have from the system, but it has been previously listed as a short-term rental. That is.
And it was listed for longer periods, or shorter periods than 30 days
That is correct.
Do we know after the planning commission meeting, or at what point that started?
At the end of October, October 23rd, the listing was pulled, so I haven't had a chance to go back and look. It was the same listing that was there prior to the hearing.
Was it, was she heard on the 9th of September too?
I will have to double check. I believe she was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moss.
For remaining at the dais, appreciate it, at the podium. How, I guess you can see, or you did see, when someone was paying the back taxes that was when they were operating illegally, there's only one way to say that. You're paying something back, you were operating illegally. Do we know the time frame for which the property owner was operating illegally?
I can only infer at this point. More than likely what has happened is, as she has noted, our staff doesn't put a imperative note on saying you need to go get your business license. As I said, we did tell them that, as the previous application, that is part of the beginning part so that you can pay anything that you may have done previously, because you still owe that no matter what. I do not know that timeframe. I apologize.
No, don't apologize. There's a lot of things to know out there, and I appreciate your candor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Jones.
Well, I'm going to move for denial of this application. I went out to look at the property. In fact, I've been out there twice. And it's a very small front to the property on a very narrow road. The parking, frankly, in that neighborhood is very, very restricted. There's not a lot of parking at all on the street. And the fact that it's a neighborhood that is residential in nature and not in of a hotel-type nature or anything like that. It's strictly a residential community. And the fact that there's a lot of public opposition, frankly, to the application, all of those factors combined, I just think that it would not be proper to approve this conditional use permit. So I'm going to move to deny it.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk.
The motion is to deny. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, the application of Sherry Arnaldi is denied.
Okay, moving on to item 14, Valerie Taylor for a conditional use permit, raise short-term rental, 3644 Britt Terrace, District 5, Lynn Haven.
Valerie Taylor is the first speaker, and then Andrew Gregory. Oh, I'm sorry. That's on another one. I apologize. Valerie Taylor, and then Barbara Masters-Dillon, the speaker.
Welcome.
Hi. Good evening. So thank you for the opportunity to state my case. My husband and I are retirees, and we are area residents. We have a very large family, and when we have guests, or we have our family, which include my children and grandchildren, I don't have enough room for them. So this property, I purchased it to accommodate the overflow of my family. And so we had it for a while, and we were using it, kept it for the family. And we really worked on it and decorated it like a home away from home, because it's really where I keep my family. And when they usually come and we had to put them in the hotel, it was very difficult. Nobody wants to go to the hotel. They want to sleep in a home. So I said, let us get this other property. We live about less than 15 minutes from this property. So the main purpose is to accommodate our family. And then we said, okay, maybe we could use it as a dual purpose. So this application is that whenever we're not using it, we could do some short-term rental, which will give us the flexibility to control our calendar, only rent it when we're not using it. So I'm asking you for your consideration to allow us this opportunity to be flexible with our calendar. Long-term rental will definitely defeat the purpose and wouldn't give us that opportunity to use it when we want to use it. So,
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, Mr. Bellucci.
You mentioned, good evening.
good evening.
You mentioned that you purchased the property to be used by your family. You have a large family. So do you live next door or adjacent to this property?
No, we are about 15 minutes away from this, less than 15 minutes from this house. My son lives, my older son, who is a school administrator, he lives like about 10 minutes from this. And it's really a family thing. It's our thing. So we don't have managers or that. And if you would get a chance to get into the house and see, maybe you would like it too. We fix it so that we can enjoy it. So,
Thank you. That answers my question.
Mr. Wood.
So just to clarify, so what neighborhood do y'all live in?
we live in Chesapeake, in
Chesapeake?
Bruce Station.
Okay. Has this property been rented since you've owned it?
Yes. When we applied, we applied we registered at the tax office, and then we applied for this. And then we were getting ready for something in the water, because there's a little fuzziness whether we could have rented it while we put the application in and while we got a tax thing in. So we had a couple reservations for something in the water. Then it was canceled. So most of the guests, we had a few guests that canceled and a few that local, I guess these are local road trip guests who I honored their reservation. But then I got my letter from the planning office, the comment letter, which stated that it's not allowed. So immediately I closed it and canceled the rest of the appointment that I have. Okay. So it has been closed since.
So I've if I could, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. So we've gotten a letter from one neighbor. I had a phone call from one and an email from another. So it's the neighbors on both sides, even across the street, are opposed to this, and they say that y'all have not been over to talk to them or introduce yourselves or anything?
I don't know which one of the neighbors that, but we spoke to the neighbors, even the one that is adjacent to me. We share the fence. I actually invited her. She knew that we were doing this for the family, and when we goes there, she knows. And then I told her about this plan that I was having, and I even invited her in. She came in and saw it, and she even asked me, she said, "Are you going to let them come and mess up your place the way you fix it up so nicely where you want to have guests in it?" I said, "Look, we're not here for every day. Or my family, they travel. They're all over the globe, so we're just going to use it for that." And my belief in humanity is that if you give somebody a place that is nice and welcoming, I don't think people spend money to come to your place to trash it. I think they come there, and the way you present yourself and the way you treat your place, I think they will come and respect it as well. And for the few that we did have, I can tell you, they really respected the rules and the property. I had no problem. So those were the neighbors that were definitely adjacent to all the fences. There was one on one side, and I didn't get a chance to speak with her because she's a tenant too. and I could never catch up with her. But we spoke to most of them.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner.
Good evening. I find it interesting that they mentioned something in the water. The first something in the water was not the success that everyone says it was. It was just a giant party that the city paid for. And the reason that they did it, I don't understand. I don't believe in rewarding bad behavior by having a party. And, you know, these neighborhoods, this is obviously for investment. So, I mean, this is far away. You know, this isn't at the oceanfront where you have something in the water. Now, I think that the city manager and the new police chief that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, you know, should be reaching out and having events in the neighborhood where there's problems. We have problem neighborhoods. Most of the crime is in certain neighborhoods. All those people can't afford. Some of them were paying $500 for tickets for the whole weekend and paying for hotels. I just don't think that's the best use of our beach, and I don't think it's appropriate for our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, would you like to have rebuttal? Not required, but if you'd like.
Come on up to the microphone, ma'am.
Thanks for mentioning something in the water. This was not a property that was bought for this purpose. My only purpose for mentioning that was the fact that I started using it before, because it was a little bit fuzzy in between that. But prior to that, it was closed. I had it locked up. And then I said, okay, we could use it for something in the water. But then I realized that was not the right thing to do, so I closed it. But it's not that the property was just, as a matter of fact, it's not even an investment property. It's my family's second home. That my grandchildren and my children and the rest of my family who travel from all over the world come here to stay, because I find it hard for them to, they don't want, whenever I say, okay, I'm going to get a few rooms in this hotel close by to stay, it's like it's wasted. They don't want to go. They want to stay, so we all bundle up. So I said, let's do this and make it a home so the children, my grandchildren love it. So it wasn't a matter of something in the water.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Are you saying that you only use it for your family members when they come?
Yes. We go there, you know, in the days we do things there. You know, sometimes we go over and spend a day or so.
But do you rent it to people outside of your family?
No. The only people outside of the family was when I opened it up for something in the water and I had a few guests. And then I said I accommodated some of them and then I canceled the rest. But it's not rented to anyone.
When you say you had some guests, were they friends? Or
No. I had listed it for something in the water to accommodate people who were coming to the show.
So my question to you is if you're not using it for anything but your family and so forth, why do you need a short-term rental use permit?
Oh, the short-term permit is for when my family is not using it.
Are you saying when your family's not using it, you do rent it?
When my family is not using it, I would like to rent it.
You would like to
I would like to rent it.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Bobby?
Mr. DeHaan, I have a question that's germane to this application, but I think more largely is something that we continue to hear, and I wonder if you could just provide any perspective and that is that one of the things that, a word that's been used a lot tonight, and I don't think it's a coincidence, is fuzzy, that appears to be a lack of clarity on the part of applicants about what are the requirements and when. And I don't mean that as any commentary on the work you and your staff do, but I'm wondering if that's something that you continue to hear. I know I do, and the responsibility is largely on council, in that the regulations and expectations continue to evolve and have changed, and that's happening around the country, I guess. But I also think we do need to own up, as we sit and evaluate these applications, what is our responsibility to provide clear direction and expectations for applicants, as well for people who are in the neighborhood surrounding, who are making their own evaluations of these applications. And so I wonder if you think, based on what you've heard tonight and in the past and in your experiences, if you think there's a need for improvement in sharing that information, and or if you think that our expectations are communicated clearly and somehow there's a disconnect with the folks who are applying.
I will say this twofold, Councilman Berlucci. During the one council hearing probably a few months ago, which is after the application timeline for this property, this application was actually submitted in June, and then they provided all necessary paperwork in September for us to move them onto an agenda. So, but that being said, we did recognize that there were gaps. We do point applicants to the website. That website says stop, do not rent your home or your units as a short-term rental. Contact us so we can walk you through the process. I believe what has been in place in order to collect taxes may be confusing to folks because they feel like they're getting something. However, that's a hurdle that's already out there that the Commissioner of Revenue is charged with collecting taxes, and that is a piece that we have to point people towards in order to get them compliant. So, but we do have on the website at this moment, if you go to it, vbgov.com/STR, it says stop, do not operate. You need to come see us, and we make that clear when we talk to applicants as well.
Just as a follow-up, I think that may be where the gap is. So if an applicant if they register with the Commissioner of Revenue, will they get approval to collect, for example, or, whatever, the registration approval from the Commissioner of Revenue before their application to operate a short-term rental is approved? Would their registration be confirmed with the Commissioner of Revenue?
So the Commissioner of Revenue sends their business license applications to us for review and approval. During that time frame, we do tell them that they do need to apply through the use permit process, but it is my understanding through the process, and again, I'll need to verify with the Commissioner of Revenue as well and his team, that they still move forward to be able to collect the taxes because there are folks that had operated and they want to go ahead and collect the funds when they have them in front of them.
Yeah, I can understand how confusing that is for everyone involved, but in a conversation that I've had recently about this process, and that was communicated to me, they said, well, we thought we could operate because we received registration from the Commissioner of Revenue to collect taxes. So I think there is some confusion, and just to whatever extent we're responsible for, communicating clearly with people, I think that, it's worth taking a look and see if any improvements can be made, because I don't think it's an accident that we continue to hear the same story about some confusion. And admittedly, the whole process is confusing, but maybe there are some improvements. Thank you very much. Appreciate all you do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've gone out and looked at this house 3 times now, different times of the day, and as recently as this morning. And I'm troubled with it for a number of reasons. One, hearing from the neighbors as recently as this morning, indicating that there's been no outreach to them. and they are opposed. And so the information I have as of this morning is the neighbors on both sides and directly across the street are opposed to this use. The other issue, can you pull up the driveway picture, Bobby? That one right there. Well, go back to the schematic. You know, that doesn't really fairly represent the situation there. That adding that driveway piece on there is going to take up most of the whole front of the right side of the house and take out the landscaping there in order to do that, and it's going to be unusual on that street. So that's also an issue for me. Having heard the applicant say that their primary use is for the,
No, ma'am, you had your chance to talk. I'm sorry, ma'am, you had your chance to speak. The councilman is speaking.
So, and having the applicant indicate that their primary use was for family, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Stiles, there does not need to be any permit or anything like that for people to use this for their family. Yeah, so I think it can be done without this, so I would move for denial.
Motion and a second for denial. Any other conversation? Okay, call for the vote, please.
The motion is to deny. Councilmember Abbott?
I have to abstain from this item. I have an interest in the property. My insurance company insures it.
Thank you. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer? By a vote of 9-1 with Ms. Abbott abstaining, the application of Valerie Taylor has been denied.
Okay, moving on to the next item would be item 16, Andrew Kutch Gregory, short-term rental, 514 Pinewood Drive, District 6, Beach.
Andrew Gregory is the applicant, and after Mr. Gregory is Barbara Messer, the only other speaker signed up.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening. Sorry, just going to catch my breath after the mass there. Appreciate you all sticking with us this long and down at the agenda. Mayor, City Council, Andrew Kutch Gregory. Me and my wife own 514 Pinewood Drive. It was purchased for one primary purpose and was be a family vacation home. We found the home 2 doors down from my children's grandparents on the street. We've known about this home for many years, and we consider ourselves part of the neighborhood. Just this weekend, we were at the house, and I was helping out our 92-year-old neighbor put together his new futon. This is a family home, and a secondary purpose to help offset some of the cost of the mortgage would be to help rent it short-term. We found the home by renting it ourselves. We love the neighborhood. We love the neighbors. We hand out Christmas presents and Christmas cards to the neighbors and consider ourselves part of the neighborhood. The Planning Commission voted a split vote, which is kind of unique if you look at the way y'all vote. Not y'all, excuse me, the Planning Commission's vote for a denial, primarily based on the character of the neighborhood. I'd like to point out the character of this neighborhood has been short-term rentals for many years, and we've had multiple people attest to that. We've had emails sent in on our behalf attesting to that as well. If you look at the neighborhood on a map, Norfolk Avenue is directly behind us with that major 10-foot sidewalk. So all of the major tourist and residential local traffic walks directly behind our house, as well as, I appreciate you putting up the map, staff. You can notice that there's the 2 lakes to the north and to the south. Pinewood Drive is the only street that runs directly through to Atlantic and Ocean Avenue. So any complaints about my house creating excess pedestrian traffic are anecdotal at best, because we get major pedestrian traffic merely by the fact of where we live, sandwiched between Norfolk Avenue and Pinewood Drive. Neighborhood history, you see the map, it's 3 blocks from the beach. The beach is right there over Atlantic Avenue. This isn't like some of the other properties that come up here that are well off to the west in Town Center and whatnot. This is in the area that makes perfect sense for a short-term rental to help with assist, as I believe Barbara mentioned, the 10 million to 20 million tourists that we get a year, and not all of them want to stay in a hotel. They want to come out here and spend a lot of money on the great resources that we have, but they want to stay in a home with their families, particularly during COVID. And I just want to attest to some of the anecdotal complaints that you hear about the neighborhood and neighborhood security, we contribute to the neighborhood. I know Billy, I know Brett, I know Sarah, I know Carmen. I know the people on my street. We have family outings, we have family barbecues with them. My in-laws host a Halloween party, well, not this year, pandemic, every year on their front driveway. And the neighbors come by and we hang out. This is our neighborhood as much as our home. We have cameras, front, back, side. We are not renting right now, but we will vet anyone that potentially stays there. Neighbors have my phone number, Wes on the left and Steve and Vanessa on the right. There's age restrictions on our rental once it goes active, and there won't be parties. We don't allow it, and it wouldn't be a good rental if we did. And we adhere to the city ordinances, and once my listing goes active, we'll notify that to everyone that they need to adhere to city ordinances. And we are available, as well as my children's grandparents are available, 2-minute walk down the street if there were any issues. So at that, I'll leave it at that and not take up any more time as we're running late into the evening, and ask if any of you fine gentlemen or lady have any questions or concerns that I could address immediately, and I'd be happy to do that. Thank you for your time.
Applicant. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Rouse.
Where's your primary residence?
Primary residence at the time when I put in this application was in Alexandria, and that's why we bought it as a vacation home to come down and visit the children's grandparents, my in-laws. But I was actually recently just got orders back here, so we have a house in Chesapeake. So I myself and my wife are available within 30 minutes as well.
Thank you for being here. I don't, there are no other speakers other than on this?
No, sir.
Okay. There were some neighbors who appeared in opposition at the Planning Commission, I noted, who apparently are not here tonight, and I don't think I've heard from either one of them. Have you
No,
had any
sir.
discussions with them?
Honestly, we used to consider them friends. Both of them were long-term family friends. Like I said, Christmas presents, Christmas cards every year. I think they just don't like the idea of an STR, not necessarily against me. One of the, and I won't put out names, it's not my style, sir, but one of them even helped me with the renovations that I've done on the property to improve it. The previous owner hadn't renovated in 30 years. He lent me his concrete drill and helped me come out back and tear down an old dilapidated shed that needed to be removed. So I was kind of remiss when he showed up. And then the other gentleman, sir, he actually had his own property listed as an STR. And I have the listing here if you'd like to see it. So it kind of surprised me that anyone even showed up. I think they just got the notices in the mail and they didn't like the idea of the STR, and nothing against me, myself, or my family.
I agree. I think that's probably true, but my point is that there are people in every neighborhood, and you shouldn't take it personally.
No, and I don't take it personally.
Who don't see in their good sense, and I sympathize with them. I don't always agree with them. Sometimes I do agree with them, but who just don't believe a neighborhood of small houses is the best place for short-term rentals because of the proximity to your neighbors and the fact that the neighborhood, there may be short-term rentals nearby, but we've only started this process, and they see, when is it going to stop? You know, sometimes they think enough is enough.
I would agree with you, sir, if, like we said, case by case, on this case,
Yeah.
like I said, my family and I had a home renovation, and we actually stayed in this property with the previous owner. So the other neighbors this property has been run as a rental illegally before I purchased it for many, 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 many years, and they didn't say anything. And so I think what brought them out was the formalized process, sir.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do is take it to the next level with your help, with the council's help, add security cameras, put tens of thousands of dollars of improvements and renovations into it, bring the home forward as opposed to behind the curtain, and run it the proper way so that it actually improves the neighborhood, not detracts from the neighborhood.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear you say that, and I urge you to do that. And I'm just saying this in a way because I hate to see neighbors losing the sense of neighborhood and community over it. It just, you have to realize everybody's got a different view of this. It does. So I would urge you not only to improve your property, assuming you get, this is approved, but to continue to stay in touch with your neighbors and make sure that it is in fact being operated.
Oh, most certainly, sir, and I promise
the way
that
they
is the
have.
case. My son's at my grandparents', the grandparents right now, and my family was staying there 3 weeks ago for almost 2 weeks. So, like I said, I was at Carmen's house last weekend. We plan to be a part of this neighborhood 100%. Whether or not we're sleeping there every night, we consider ourselves part of this neighborhood, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones?
Can you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry. You say you just moved back to the area?
Yes, sir. I'm active duty military and was stationed in the DC area for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Barbara Messner is the only other speaker signed up on this. Ms. Messner?
Could we please have some due process? This applicant, you ask questions when there's another speaker, and then they get a rebuttal. I don't think that's fair. It's the long night. I'm here because I care about my city and the neighborhood and the expansion of these short-term rentals. There are questions about the process. And if planning denies it, why are you even hearing it? This whole thing's ridiculous. Like I said, I'm opposed to all of these, and it's obvious that there's big money involved in renting these. I think some of the Sandbridge homes, some of those large homes were going for as much as I think $32,000 a week. So people see dollar signs, and you know that street does have a lot of small homes, and the traffic there is terrible, and people don't know their way around the city, especially people coming from out of town. So, like I said, I'd appreciate it. I've had to do this before when you ask questions before all the speakers are there, and then you give a rebuttal to the applicants. And some people it's 3 minutes, some it isn't. So I think all neighborhoods matter, and whether or not people show up, if people objected, they have a right to peaceful enjoyment and safety in their neighborhood. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory, would you like to rebut?
I apologize for taking any more time, but I'd like to end on a positive note on Ms. Barber's half and the city council's half. One, I have to commend you for your tenacity. Young lady, you stuck with us through and through. So whether or not I agree with you or you'd agree with me, I appreciate your tenacity. And to the city council, to her comment on due process, I'll admittedly say I've been frustrated with the due process. You and your staff have gone way beyond what I thought this permitting process would be, and so I'd like to just, given the opportunity in the due process, to thank Bill Landfer and Kevin Hirschberger and the Zoning and the Planning Commission, that your staff. I've actually been in this process for almost 12 months now. I started before the pandemic, and due to the pandemic, it's been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. Your staff has been outstanding, going above and beyond. So use my rebuttal time just to thank them. And then this gentleman, I apologize, I keep missing your name because of the mass, but I've seen him on the planning commissions and the council commissions or hearings, and he's amazing. So whether or not I get approved, I just want to use my time to end on a positive note and thank the due process. Whether or not I agree with it or not, it's been in depth. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tower.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm going to move for approval of this. I'd like to make a comment if I could. I have found myself with one part of me focusing on the overlay system that we have referred to the Planning Commission, not knowing how that's ultimately going to come out, but hoping that it produces a result that is fair and equitable for everybody. I know it won't please everybody. But I'm trying very hard to focus not on that, because I don't think it's fair to do that. When we made the referral, I think we agreed that we would continue to hear the cases that came before us under the current set of laws, regulations, and hearings. And I don't think it's fair to applicants to impose restrictions that are not yet in abeyance. Having said that, I don't have any problem saying no when I think either the operator or the location is wholly inappropriate and shouldn't be used for a short-term rental. This is a close call, but I'm impressed with Mr. Gregory. I like the fact that he's got family in the neighborhood. I think it does anchor him. It does give some assurance that it's going to be operated in a way that will not be a nuisance to the neighborhood, but will allow neighbors to enjoy their peaceful quiet. I hope, Mr. Gregory, you're listening and you do that. I don't mean this in any personal way at all, although I'm using your personal situation to kind of advocate for it. But I understand these are small houses. This is a neighborhood that would not be in the overlay as proposed, but it is near the beach. There are some existing grandfathered and other previously approved issues, and I'm going to vote in favor of it. I move that we do so.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Motion is to approve. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
No.
Councilmember Henley? Is that nay? Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Nay.
Councilmember Moss?
Nay.
Councilmember Rouse? That was aye. Thank you. Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer? By a vote of 7 to 4, this application has been approved.
Okay, moving on to item 17, Sean Riley Ray, conditional use permit, Ray short-term rental at 604 23rd and a half Street, District 6, Beach.
The applicant, Sean Riley, is participating via WebEx. Mr. Riley, if you would pause 2 to 3 seconds before beginning your comments, and we will be able to hear you, so if you would just begin your comments, and you'll have up to 10 minutes since you are the applicant. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time. I apologize I can't be there in person. We just welcomed my newborn daughter home last week, and so in an abundance of caution, I am trying to avoid large crowds. The Planning Commission voted to approve our conditional use permit, and so I'm here, I guess, more to answer any questions that may come up. I appreciate your time.
Okay, hearing none. Mr. Tower?
I have a question. Mr. Riley, is that it? I'm sorry. Are you related in any way to the owners of the Unit A property on the same property that you have?
Mr. Riley, if you would like to respond, thank you.
No, we are not related to our neighbors on the Unit A.
Mr. Tower? just a moment, because the back and forth doesn't work.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Riley, have you had any contact with those owners of that property concerning their willingness or approval or disapproval of your application?
Mr. Riley, if you'd like to respond, thank you.
Yes, sir. They actually, because it's a 2-unit detached condo situation, they needed to sign our application, and they've also written a support letter in regards to our approval.
I'll ask this to Mr. Tahan, just because we can get it quicker. That unit is not an applicant for a short-term rental, Bobby?
As of the printing of this map, they were not an applicant yet, but I will double check the system very quickly and give you an up-to-date answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Tao?
No, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, go to the next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner, and after Ms. Messner is Nancy Parker.
Okay, this is at 600 block of 23rd Street. I lived in the 500 block, and there's been traffic problems, car accidents, everything for decades, going back to the 80s and 90s. All this talk about overlays, I mean, it's ridiculous. We have, I don't know I forget how many hotel rooms throughout the city. It's ridiculous to have short-term rentals. And when people talk about that they've been around forever, yes, they have, but we didn't have crime, we didn't have year-round rentals, we didn't have something in the water, and then when they canceled 2 replacements, I don't remember voting on those replacements, but I do remember the votes on more advertising, that Virginia Beach is open. I mean, it's not open for our kids, but it's open for other things. Yeah, I think Ms. Parker has some objections to some of these things because there are problems with traffic, there is problems with parking, and as I've clearly stated, you're talking about bringing people back to the beach and telling them that they can park there on Atlantic Avenue. How can you park there when it's all these delivery trucks and you take away the trolleys and then you tell them they can park, but it's 2-hour limit? There's no meter, so how do you determine, other than the cameras, the $1 million cameras, how do you determine when they leave and when they return? So I'm opposed to the short-term rentals, and I don't know why Ms. Wilson left, because both of these are in the Beach District. And no one's abstaining, and I appreciate the 4 or 5 no votes, but you're all liable if anything happens. I've said it before. You're all putting a burden on our police and 311 and everything else. So I'm opposed. Thank you.
Nancy Parker.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Mayor Dyer, members of council, my name is Nancy Parker, and I live in the 500 block of 23rd Street. I've been a resident of the Beach District for over 50 years. I'm opposed to the request for a short-term rental at 604 23rd and a half Street for the following reasons. While my home is not immediately next door, given the nature of this neighborhood, we are close. In reality, just a few lots away. This is not in the oceanfront resort section, and I think I heard Mr. Tower refer to the fact that that should not be taken as a factor. But it really is a factor in how these things are lining up down at the beachfront. This is an area classified as a residential neighborhood. It's 6 blocks back from the ocean, with few STRs in the immediate area, and most of these were grandfathered. This will open a new avenue for short-term rentals in the Old Beach residential neighborhood. This house was bought in February for approximately $465,000. Now the owner wants to flip it into a short-term rental. If this passes, this will not be the last request in this particular area. There were 6 homes built in 2015, of which this is one, and is located on the alley or the half street. In fact, I did not even see the sign. I just happened to be thumbing through your agenda, and I said, oh, and walked over there, because the orange sign is, again, on the half alley. We've got construction going on. Most people wouldn't have seen it if they knew what was happening. There's barely enough space between these, even to practice social distancing. As you can see, there's 2 houses allowed on each one of those lots. No matter how one looks at it, this is a perfect case of spot zoning that will set a new course for this area of our neighborhood. These business entities have a profound and compounding impact on our neighborhood, as you are finding throughout the city. I respectfully request that you deny the short-term rental, as it's a game changer for the immediate residential area. This is not a standalone, one-time vote with no repercussions for the rest of this area. How many more are you ready to approve? Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Mayor, that's all the speakers. So, Mr. Riley, if you would like to begin rebuttal for 3 minutes.
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Moss.
Mr. Riley, please hold your rebuttal. Mr. Moss has a comment. Thank you.
I just always like to recognize whenever a former city council member appears before us. I think they've earned to be recognized as such, but Mrs. Parker served, I think it was 16 years, maybe 20 years on this body, and I just always like to publicly recognize her service to the citizens. Thank you very much, Ms. Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Mr. Riley, if you would pause 2 to 3 seconds before you begin your rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand Mrs. Parker is generally and adamantly opposed to short-term rentals. I think what may be important to consider, this is our primary residence. We did buy it, the home, and we live here, and we bought it in February of this year. But I believe, many of the concerns I've heard her voice are in regards to changing the nature of neighborhoods, the character, perhaps worried about traffic. And I think I'm concerned that's a bit of a specious argument. We are one of the few owner residents on our street. We are surrounded by rentals. In the 8 months we've been here, I've had 5 different neighbors go through, the adjacent properties. I have spoken to the owners of the property. We do have support letters from not only our neighbor in the back, but also the owners of the adjacent properties have submitted support letters. So I think those people immediately impacted or potentially impacted by the approval of this short-term rental have all voiced their support. And I think in looking at Ms. Parker being a couple blocks away, I just think that the impact that this would potentially have, I'm struggling to figure out what that might be. This is neither here nor there, but we do plan, and our intention is that we will not be renting this to more than 2 unrelated parties. That's just something that personally we are going to be restricting. So this is not a situation where we have a party house. The price point on this will be prohibitive. And so this is, as I said, this is our home. We plan to have this as, an investment. That was the reason we bought it. And it's, something that we have put a lot of money into already to really make it beautiful, and we'll be taking care of it. And so this is not a party house, if perhaps maybe that is what Ms. Parker was trying to allude to. So I appreciate your time, your consideration of this matter, and thank you again.
Ms. Abbott?
I have a question for the applicant. Can I go ahead? You mentioned that this is your primary residence. Do you intend to live on the property until you want to do like a home swap, or you go on vacation, you rent it while you're on vacation? Is this your primary residence?
Mr. Riley, you can respond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It is. This is our primary residence. We have lived in Old Beach since 2016 with a short stint away, and so moved back here earlier this year, and this will be our primary residence for the foreseeable future. But are requesting the opportunity to be able to rent it out as we're gone. And we have a growing family, as I mentioned. I just have our third child, and so at some point the house may be too small for us, and we would like the opportunity to have that, maintain it as an investment.
All right, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Tower.
Another close call, but I am persuaded by Ms. Parker that this is we've got rentals, no question we've got rentals on that block, but we don't have yet a plethora of short-term rentals, and I think Old Beach is threatened by the total number. I'm trying to help it preserve its space, and I'm going to move for denial.
Okay, motion and second for denial. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson left. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, 10-0, thank you, Terry. The application of Sean Riley has been denied.
Final item of the evening,
Yeah.
number 18, Red Lion Properties LLC for conditional use permit, raise short-term rental at 1009 Barclay Square, District 6, Beach.
Dana Sampson, the applicant, and after Ms. Sampson, the only other speaker is Barbara Messner.
Good evening, Mayor Dyer, council members. Thank you for allowing us to present our application for the conditional use permit for our condo at 1009 Barclay Square. We are just right off of Norfolk Ave, about 5 blocks from the beach. Great walking distance, biking distance to the beach. We have gone through the process, received a recommendation of approval from our planning staff member. We met all criteria and requirements for the conditional use permit. We did receive a denial from Planning Commission shortly before our Planning Commission meeting. They sent out a question on if we were of the opinion, if we agreed or disagreed to a change in conditions of knocking it down to 1 rental per week and 2 per bedroom. We offered our opinion that we didn't agree with that because we have a lot of people in the area that come to vacation for 3 to 5 days versus a week, so that would severely limit it during summertime. It looks like we received our denial for that reason only. We were very confused by the wording. Almost everybody that spoke at our Planning Commission meeting had been brought up there because they either agreed or disagreed on one or both parts, and there was a whole lot of, do you agree, do you abide, do you this, do you that? Long story short, obviously if those changes are made to the law, we comply with the law. So we have no problem with that. Again, realistically, we were just confused by the wording at our planning commission meetings. We just want to make sure that council knows that we would abide by all requirements of the ordinance. We have the support of our neighbors. In this complex right here, our unit, which we completely gutted and rehabbed, is a second floor unit. There's one neighbor across the hall from us and two right below us. We know all of them. They all have our phone number. We're on a first name basis with each of them. We know their children. I've also attended multiple condo board meetings. It is allowed in our condo community to do short-term rentals of any length. So we've met with all board members. We've had them sign off. All is good. We don't have any complaints. We had no one speak against us. At our planning commission meeting, we have the person that we actually bought our condo from. He actually thought he was going to speak on behalf of us there, but we said, hey, it's a little bit more important, but he's a little elderly, so he didn't make it out tonight to support us in our request for this. Can't really think of much else. I know a lot of what you guys talk about, and we've watched the different hearings, is characterization of the neighborhood, things like that. Again, we're a beach property. I don't know. I know personally one of our neighbors on the other part of the L in our neighborhood, she's been short-term renting for a long time there. I'm not sure if she's filed her paperwork, if she's grandfathered in, but we've got a mix of regular renters, but it's a big biking community. We spend a lot of time there. Actually, one of the primary reasons that we bought it, we live in Larkspur right now, but one of the primary reasons we bought that one was because it was a great investment property, and we spend a lot of time there. I'd say probably 50% of our friends live at the oceanfront. We've got our bikes locked up there now, so we're there all the time. So thank you for your time. And
Any questions?
Yes, when you say you're going to comply with the law, would you please specify what you understand compliance would constitute for your property?
So I guess there's been, and this is where a lot of the confusion came from, because even when you go to the city's website right now to look at the ordinance, and when we applied, it was no more than 2 rentals per week and 3 people per bedroom. But apparently, I guess there's been a condition change saying that if the conditional use permit is granted, that you can only do 1 rental per week with 2 people per bedroom. So obviously, we would abide by that by all means. But it was just very confusing to us because I couldn't find it anywhere written. And planning just said, hey, you've got to agree or disagree to this. And I was like, well, I don't really agree with it because I think 2 rental contracts per week is a great idea because of the fact that families are limiting their vacation time because of monetary reasons and things like that. And also 2 per bedroom. We have a 2-bedroom condo right now. If it's just 2 per bedroom and I've got mom, dad, and 3 kiddos, I basically can't approve their rental. So I wasn't sure if there was going to be any changes made for maybe age restrictions, if people under a certain age would be not counted as that 3rd person. But nonetheless, if that's something that's
Let me be
the
more
rule.
direct, because I wasn't looking for an explanation of all the options. I was really understanding what you were committing to. Are you saying that you are proffering 2 per bedroom? Or are you saying you are the law and you think that's 3 per bedroom? I'm just asking for a declarative statement rather than an explanation.
Well, from what I now understand is that even though the ordinance is written as it was when it was approved, we went to all the planning meetings and council hearings, right now it says, the ordinance says 3 per bedroom. We've been now educated to say that, no, you can only limit it to 2 per bedroom. So I'm saying, obviously, we're going to accept that. Planning Commission, the wording was very off with how we were understanding things, but we've since been educated on what additional conditions have been imposed.
Accepted by you.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah. So do I personally say, like, hey, heck no? But yes, I'm going to accept for sure.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara Messner?
Okay. Clearly stated as an investment. And since, I've brought up the due process of being able to have all the information in the right amount of time, and the inability to get, to contact council members, I would like to have the opportunity. I was told I couldn't ask Mr. Tahan questions, but I think it's only fair, because this was denied. If you could bring up the picture showing the actual thing, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, this has been brought up before. This doesn't say, and I know the Shadowlawn people have objected to some of these. Okay. And where is that exactly? No, I'm talking about proximity to Norfolk Avenue and the oceanfront. That's pretty teeny. Okay.
Just as
Ms.
a-
Messner, if you
Thank
could
you.
focus
All right,
on, yeah, we've seen the
Okay,
pictures.
I know how you feel. I've watched your votes. I'm just horrified because everyone has the right to peaceful enjoyment of their home and not to have many hotels. And they've also changed it from children. 10 was bad enough, but now it's 15 and under. That's not necessarily a child, and they're added into the count. So I oppose these, and everyone just sees it as a cash cow, and all these events that the city puts on, they're at the oceanfront. So I'm in opposition. Thank you.
Ms. Sampson, would you like to come up for a 3-minute rebuttal?
Thank you. I don't have too much of a rebuttal. I can promise it's not just a cash cow. We spend a large majority of our time here, and definitely our neighbors would advise us if there was any issue with peaceful enjoyment, for sure. But thank you again for your time.
Okay, Mr. Wood.
Thanks. Mr. Town, can you bring up the picture of the garage? Ma'am, if you could answer a question. No, I need to ask. Yeah. So this parking garage, this is your second parking space?
Yes.
So do you all lease that garage exclusively?
Yes, we do.
So
Yeah.
it looks like a big garage with a little door.
It actually is, it does look very small in that picture, but obviously a car fits normally in there. We were actually just.
So there's no other cars going to be in there?
There's no other car. No, that's dedicated to us. We went back and forth with our condo association. They had actually just changed bylaws and things like that. The complex itself, when we first started the process, it said, one parking space per bedroom, and this has a huge parking lot. There's only 64 units. Each unit gets one assigned parking space, and I think there's 36 guest spaces. So we were like, this is more than fine. But then we were told, nope, you've got to have something assigned. So Will Miller, our planning member, we posed this idea to him. Our condo board has signed off on it. We actually have physical lease paperwork and everything, and we can get that to you guys.
So how long is that lease?
It's for, is it a 12-month lease? 12-month lease, renewable, with no expiration period. So we are the only ones, they can only lease this spot to an owner in the condo association, or condo community, excuse me, and no one else has expressed any interest. I don't think anybody wants to pay nearly what we pay every month for it.
Right,
So.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Tower.
I did look at the transcript of the Planning Commission, and it does appear that the confusion that Ms. Sampson's talking about was an honest misunderstanding about what, I don't see any attempt for her to get out of it. She was expressing disappointment, not disagreement, I think would be one way to say it.
I'd say yes.
Is that's
Pretty
accurate,
much,
isn't
yes.
it? Yeah. Okay. I don't have any further questions, but I'm ready to move for
Thank you, guys.
approval.
Okay, a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hey, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
With the same exasperation with Mr. Jones. Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson left. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 9-1, the motion for Red Line Properties has been, the application's been approved.
Okay, there being no appointments this evening, is there any unfinished business? Any new business? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.